Hi, I'm Leora, and this is not just a story about a bad job. It's about family and the price of being underestimated. When I left the finance world to fix broken tech on a farm in Spokane, my sister laughed. At dinner, she raised her glass and toasted to real success, then turned to me with a smirk and said I was still figuring it out. Everyone laughed. I didn't. My parents never defended me. They said it was a phase. My brother told people I was off the grid. I found out my sister got married after the fact. And when I saw her post mocking my work publicly, that was the final straw. They said I was dirty, that I'd chosen a dead-end path. 5 years later, I invited them to dinner. And this time, I was the one holding the clicker. And the truth. But what did I show them? What made my sister's face go white in front of our entire family? And why did my father stop speaking halfway through my presentation? You'll see. But I'll say this. Success doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it comes with silence. The clink of wine glasses echoed like distant bells, delicate and sharp. I stood just outside the archway to the dining room, pretending to be mesmerized by a painting of abstract flowers on the hallway wall. In truth, I was trying to time my re-entry, hoping, maybe foolishly, that the introductions were over. Kala had thrown this dinner for Mom's 60th birthday, hosted in her pristine Atlanta high-rise that looked like something out of an HGTV reveal. The theme, celebrating powerful women in media, was as performative as the hand-picked guest list. Influencers, editors, station producers, and me, the sister who'd left all that behind for farm dirt and tech wires in the middle of nowhere. When I finally stepped into the dining room, no one looked up. A soft jazz playlist floated under polite conversation and polished silverware. I slid into the only empty seat, conveniently wedged between an empty chair and the wall. Kala raised her glass. "To our mother," she began, her voice commanding the room like a seasoned anchor. "To a woman whose grace has been our guiding light, and to all the accomplished women here tonight who've made their mark in the media world." Applause followed. Smiles. I lifted my glass halfway, until her eyes landed on me. "And to my sister, Leora," she added, pausing just long enough for the smirk to form, "who chose a unique path, from city lights to cowfields, from newsrooms to fixing cameras on cattle farms. She's still finding her way, right?" Laughter rippled like someone had tossed a pebble into calm water. A few raised brows. I caught one woman mouthing, "Oh wow," to her partner. I felt a flush creeping up my neck, hot and electric. My fork slipped slightly against the plate. I didn't raise my glass. I didn't look at Kala. I didn't even breathe too hard. Just sat there, perfectly still, and counted the seconds until dessert. They didn't see it, but that moment lit a match in me. I excused myself a few minutes later, murmuring something about needing the restroom. My heels clicked softly down the hallway, and I ducked into the powder room. It smelled like lavender and expensive silence. I stared at myself in the mirror. Not a tear, not a crack in the face, but my expression had changed. I knew it had. There was something sharper in the corners of my mouth, something tired of swallowing every dig, every pitying look, every story told without me. The truth was, they never saw the long nights, the frost-bitten fingers working on outdoor sensor rigs, the low-signal Wi-Fi meetings with tech advisors, the slow but steady progress of turning an idea into infrastructure. All they saw was the grease under my nails and assumed it was failure. And still, I held it in. Because what was the point? They had already written my ending. When I stepped back out into the hallway, I paused, again. From around the corner, I heard my mother's voice. Gentle, low, too casual. "It's just a phase," she told my father. "She'll come around eventually. If not, at least Kala gives us something to be proud of." I didn't move. Not a flinch. My hands rested by my sides, fingers twitching against the fabric of my dress. I turned and walked toward the balcony instead of the dining room. Outside, the city skyline shimmered like someone had lined the horizon in diamonds. I stood there, arms folded, remembering the silence in our childhood home whenever I talked about technology, about changing the way agriculture worked, about building something that didn't have a polished logo or network slot yet, but would change everything. They never believed it. I was dirty. My sister made fun of my bad job. 5 years later, my net worth ranking silenced her. But not yet. Not tonight. I walked back into the dining room with my shoulders square and my mouth set in a quiet line. No one noticed. They were already deep into dessert. Miniature lemon tarts and espresso shots in dainty cups. The laughter had shifted tones, smoother now, like nothing awkward had ever happened. Calla was retelling a story about a panel she'd hosted for CNN the previous month. Gideon leaned back in his chair, beaming like she'd just accepted a Nobel. Maris dabbed the corner of her mouth with a linen napkin and didn't so much as glance in my direction. I waited for someone, anyone, to acknowledge me. Nothing. I slid into my seat without a sound. The tart was still cold. I chewed it slowly, the citrus bite harsher than I remembered. Around me, silverware clinked. Conversations ebbed and flowed like I wasn't even there. Like I hadn't just been made a punchline 20 minutes ago. I could feel the heat crawling back into my face. But this time, it didn't burn. It calcified. After a few more minutes of enduring the performance, I leaned toward Calla and said quietly, "I've got an early flight tomorrow. I'll head out." She smiled. Too bright, too rehearsed. "Of course. Safe travels." No hug, no guilt. I walked out without looking back. It was after 10 p.m. when I reached the rental. A little craftsman tucked under oaks on a quiet street. The kind of place someone books for peace, not for parties. I slipped off my heels by the door, the silence inside pressing against my skin like humidity. I tossed my clutch on the side table, kicked off the urge to cry, and walked straight to the kitchen. 1 glass of water, 2 sips. Then I sat on the floor, back against the lower cabinets. I replayed everything. Not one word. Not even Theron, who'd always called me the weird genius of the family, with a kind smile and genuine interest in my work. He'd laughed with them too. Maybe not loudly, but silence is its own kind of volume. I opened the group chat on my phone. Sullivan's United. The name felt like a bad joke now. No message from anyone. Just a photo Calla had posted. Power dinner with powerful women, captioned with a sparkle emoji. I stared at it until the screen dimmed. That was the moment it sank in, fully, finally. This wasn't accidental neglect. It was quiet, collective agreement. I'd been written out of the story. My phone buzzed. Aunt Rhea. I hesitated. She hadn't been at dinner, hadn't texted in months. I answered anyway. "Hey, sweetie," she said, voice soft, like she'd been waiting all day to say something, but didn't know how. "I heard Calla's dinner was tonight?" It was. A pause. "I didn't go. Honestly, I figured it'd just be more Calla." I let out the breath I didn't know I was holding. She continued cautiously. "Your mom told me not to worry about you. Said you were still playing with those tech toys, that you'd find your way back eventually." My fingers clenched around the phone. "I see," I said flatly. "Honey, I didn't say I believed her." "I know." We hung up a few minutes later. She tried to end on a warm note, but it didn't land. I stood up and walked to the small desk by the window. My laptop blinked to life. On the desktop were 4 folders: Farmlands Beta, Investor Report, Q3, Pitch Deck, Series B, and 1 folder in bold red font, Receipts. I clicked it open, screenshots, voicemails, emails I'd archived over the years, not out of pettiness, but pattern recognition. There was always a pattern, and I had stopped making excuses for it. Out the window, I could see a sliver of moon above the trees. Cold and distant. Familiar. That night didn't break me, but it did something better. It drew the line, and I never let them cross it again. The folder marked Receipts was still open on my screen when I stood up to refill my glass. I didn't need to reread any of it. I knew every screenshot by heart. I just wanted to feel the weight of them again, the truth I had carried alone. As I leaned against the counter, sipping water, my mind drifted, uninvited, 5 years back. Boston. I was 29, working at a mid-tier finance firm on Boylston Street, trying to make sense of spreadsheets and pitch decks that felt like someone else's skin. The numbers never lied, but they sure didn't thrill me either. Every Sunday night, I'd call home, part habit, part duty. That particular night, I was standing by the window of my studio, watching rain smear down the glass, when I said it. Dad, I think I'm going to move out west. Spokane. There's a space opening up in an old grain building. I want to convert it into a test lab for this agritech concept I've been working on. Silence. Then a short laugh. Not the amused kind, the dismissive kind. Oh, so now you think you're Steve Jobs in overalls? He said, the sarcasm sharp. It's not about being anyone, I replied. It's about doing something that matters. You have a stable job, a path, and now you want to chase dirt and gadgets in the middle of nowhere? I'm not chasing anything. I'm building something. You always were good at pretending. That was the beginning of the cut. A week later, I flew down to see them in person. I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd see it differently, face to face. We sat at the dinner table. Mom had made her famous garlic roast. Gideon folded his napkin once, then again. If you walk out that door, he said, don't come crawling back for help. No checks, no rescue plan, no temporary loans. I didn't answer right away. I looked to Maris. Her hand found mine under the table, for a second. Then she pulled it away and busied herself with pouring more wine. That silence hurt more than his words. I left 2 days later, with 2 suitcases, a used MacBook, and a heart so heavy it felt like lead. Nobody came to the airport. Nobody called the next day. Spokane greeted me with gray skies and a warehouse that smelled like rust and hope. The walls were chipped, the wiring a disaster, but it was mine. I slept on a cot in the corner the first week, surrounded by extension cords and invoices I couldn't pay yet. There were nights I doubted everything, but never the choice to leave. 3 months in, after a long day rewiring motion sensors, I needed to print a permit form. I plugged in the used HP printer I'd hauled from Boston. To my surprise, it auto-synced to my old cloud inbox. That's when I saw it. An email from Gideon to Theron, dated 2 weeks after I moved. Subject: about Leora Body. She's gone full delusional. Don't let her sweet talk you into investing. Let her learn it the hard way. I stared at the screen, hands frozen. I wasn't surprised, not really. But reading it, seeing it so plainly written, was a cut of another kind. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just opened the Sullivan's United group chat and left it. Then I blocked every number with our family name attached. That night, I slept better than I had in months. Now, back in Spokane, the morning sun angled through the window of my office. I blinked out of the memory as Noor stepped in, tablet in hand. Investor docs ready. Want a last pass before I send it out? I nodded, pushing aside the old pain like dust on glass. It didn't hurt the way it used to. It just hardened the corners. They thought cutting me off would break me, I said. Noor didn't respond, just waited. All it did was sharpen me. I couldn't sleep. The doc was done. Noor had sent it out to our top 3 investors, and my to-do list for the day was technically clear. But at 1:04 a.m., I was still sitting at my desk, scrolling aimlessly, sipping cold chamomile tea that tasted more like regret than comfort. My Slack pinged. Noor! Me. Check general. I clicked over, not expecting anything urgent. And there it was, a screenshot. Just one. Kala's name, a chat bubble. Some people are still playing with farm toys and calling it AI. Adorable. Then beneath it, the word, deleted. I didn't respond. Just saved the image to my desktop with today's date in the file name. I didn't even change my expression. Noor must have sensed the silence. Nor, me. Want me to say something? I typed slowly. Me. Nor. Not yet. The message had already sunk deep. It wasn't the words. Those were almost too predictable. It was the timing. After everything, she still thought this was a game, a toy. My chest tightened, but not from sadness. It was that colder thing, the one that made my fingers move faster, more precisely. I closed Slack and opened a private browser tab, searched for old tech media forums where Kala's ex-colleagues used to hang out. It didn't take long. A thread buried under layers of off-topic posts. Inside the bubble, life with broadcast royalty. Kala's name was mentioned more than once, and mine too, but never with kindness. One comment stood out. She had this secret chat group, Real Careers Only, used to forward her sister's startup pitches just to laugh at them. She called it Tech Barbie's Diaries, Wild Times. I stared at the screen, letting it bleed into me. It wasn't just mockery, it was sport. I wasn't just ignored, I was entertainment. For the second time that night, I didn't cry. Instead, I opened a Google Doc titled Family Incident Log. I began with the earliest wound I could remember. May 14th, age 9. Kala accidentally deletes my science fair files. And then I kept going. Each entry was short, precise. Each date, a moment I could trace. Each one felt like loading a bullet into a magazine I didn't know I'd been building. I knew this wasn't about revenge, not exactly, but I also knew silence hadn't done me any favors. I whispered to the quiet room, "You really think I haven't been watching too?" My voice barely echoed. I minimized the log and opened a new browser tab. Gmail. 2. Family group email. Subject, Family Weekend. Travel arrangements provided, Edie. Hi all, I'd love to invite you to a family gathering. Location, Santa Barbara, California. Dates. Redacted. Transportation and accommodations will be fully arranged. There's something I'd like to show you. See you soon, Leora. No flourish. No guilt. Just a time, a place, and an open door they could walk through. If they dared. I hit send. Then sat back and stared out the window. The sky was a deep velvet, stars fading behind a stretch of high clouds. They used to think I was the one hiding behind screens. This time, I'd be the one controlling what they saw. It was a Sunday morning, spring light slipping through my kitchen blinds. I had just brewed a second cup of coffee and was flipping through updates on my phone, mostly out of habit. And then I saw her. Kala, in white. Veil trailing behind her like a cloud, bouquet clasped against a picture-perfect smile. Her new husband, whose name I couldn't even recall, was frozen mid-laugh beside her. The caption, "What a perfect day for our family." I blinked twice. Scrolled back. No prior post, no announcement, no engagement celebration I remembered, and certainly no invitation. I tapped into the family group chat. Nothing, no countdown, no mention of flights or dresses or toasts. Just that photo. My fingers gripped the edge of the countertop. For a second, I couldn't tell if it was shock or just static. I called my mother. She answered on the second ring, her voice too cheery. "Leora, I was just about to—" "Did Kala get married?" A pause. 1 second. 2. Then, "Oh, yes. Yesterday, actually. It was beautiful. I didn't know there was even a wedding planned." "Well," she started, her voice softening into that maternal apology she'd weaponized for years. "We didn't think you'd be comfortable. It was very media-centric. A lot of cameras. Kala said she didn't want you to feel out of place." "Out of place," I repeated. The words tasted metallic. "You know how these things go, honey. Sometimes it's better to just keep things simple." I hung up without saying goodbye. Later that night, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, brushing my teeth. I stared at my reflection, toothbrush paused midair. There was no card, no call, no RSVP to decline. They didn't forget me. They erased me. Weeks passed. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, Theron texted, "In Spokane for work. Coffee?" I agreed. not out of warmth, but curiosity. He met me at a quiet spot downtown. No pleasantries. Just 2 paper cups and weather talk before he leaned in. I didn't agree with it, he said. With what? The wedding. Not inviting you. I said it wasn't right. I nodded, unsure whether to thank him or keep my guard up. Then he pulled out his phone, hesitated, and tapped something. She doesn't belong in my world, Kala's voice said through the speaker. She's not presentable. The words hit like a punch. I sat still, jaw tight. Theron turned off the audio. I saved it. I don't know why, but I thought you had a right to hear it. I swallowed once, then said, "Thank you for not deleting that." He didn't respond. We parted ways without hugging. That night, I updated the family incident log. March 22nd. Wedding. Excluded. Voice memo. Not presentable. Then I opened a new message window and typed a text to Kala. Just so you know, I heard what you said. One day, you'll wish you had invited me. I hit send. No reply came. And honestly, I didn't expect one. Warnings aren't for the ones who listen. They're for the ones who think they're safe. The buzz of Noor's footsteps rushing down the hallway was always a signal. Something had happened. But this time, when she pushed the glass door open to my office without knocking, her face said more than urgency. It said war. "You need to see this," she said, tablet in hand. She tagged us. I took it, not asking who she was. I already knew. There it was. Kala Sullivan, verified. There's a fine line between tech innovation and tech cosplay. Some folks are out here pretending with their farm cameras. Hashtags. Yakju reality check. Respect the grind. Media realism. And beneath that, our platform tagged. Our investors tagged. A punch to the throat in public format. I scrolled through the comments, laugh reacts, applause emojis, a few corporate peers chiming in with thinly veiled shade of their own. It was going semi-viral in our space. Fast. Noor stood in front of my desk, arms crossed. We can't let this slide. But I didn't flinch. I leaned back in my chair, thumb still resting against the screen, rereading the post one last time before locking the tablet. We're not going to respond publicly, I said. We're not sparring. We're setting a trap. She looked confused. I opened my laptop and forwarded the post. No caption, no commentary, to a senior contact I knew in Kala's corporate HR department. Her firm had strict public image guidelines, especially for directors who held public trust accounts. Let them handle it, I said. Noor raised a brow. That's cold. I didn't argue. I didn't smile either. The next week passed quietly. I didn't bring up the post again. Didn't check if she took it down. Didn't need to. Until Wednesday morning. An industry friend from LA called me out of the blue. Hey, did you hear? Your sister got pulled into a PR freeze meeting. Internal audit, reputational exposure clause or something. She looked rattled. I thanked her for the heads up, closed the call, and went back to work like nothing had happened. But inside, a switch flipped. They always thought I'd never hit back, that I'd stay quiet, passive, defeated. But the difference now was, I wasn't fighting for acceptance. I was preparing for reckoning. Later that evening, I stepped into the private conference room in the back of my office. Noor was already inside, multiple screens casting light across the table like a command center. Documents lined the wall, spreadsheets, quotes, transcripts, photo captures, timestamps, email headers. Every insult, every exclusion, every manipulation mapped like evidence in a courtroom. Noor didn't need to ask. She tapped the final screen. Everything's lined up, time to the second. We pull one trigger. There's no version of this where they recover clean. I nodded once. My voice was calm, almost eerily so. Good. Then I looked at the display again. Because I'm done whispering. The first jet left Newark at 9 a.m. A second took off from Chicago. By noon, a third rolled onto the tarmac in Houston. They didn't know where they were going, only that the invitations had come in sleek black folders, sealed with gold foil and sent by courier. No explanation. Just 2 lines. Travel included. Dress for dinner. A small part of me wondered if any of them hesitated. But curiosity was a powerful drug, especially in my family, where mystery usually meant money. I watched the flight tracker from my tablet. Every dot on the screen moved like a piece on a chessboard. Gideon, Maris, Olivia, even Calla. They were all in the air. For once, I controlled the altitude. They used to fly without me, I said to Noor, who sat quietly across the aisle. This time, I own the wings. She smirked, but said nothing. We landed in Santa Barbara first. The villa I'd rented stretched across 5 acres of coastal cliff, terracotta rooftops glowing beneath the late afternoon sun. By the time the last Rolls-Royce pulled through the gate, the staff was already in place. Each family member was handed a personalized welcome folder with their name embossed in silver. Calla glanced around the open foyer with suspicion. Is this a brand pitch or a family meeting? Olivia whispered back. Maybe both. Knowing her, there'll be a slideshow. Inside their folders, 8 p.m., dinner 9 p.m., presentation by Leora Sullivan. I didn't have to be in the room to feel the eye rolls. Still upstairs, I stood behind the curtain in my suite, watching their arrival from above. Their reactions were almost too easy to read. Maryse took photos. Gideon barked something about the wine being too French. Calla smiled politely, but tugged her phone out with nervous fingers. Noor entered behind me. They're here. You ready? I turned. Almost. We stepped out into the hall. As we walked, I caught snippets of conversation drifting up the grand staircase. This is absurd, Gideon muttered. Probably another startup sob story. She wants money again. My mother didn't reply. She rarely did when he played that card. Noor looked at me sideways. Still want to go through with this? I didn't hesitate. Now more than ever. By 7:30, the villa buzzed with dinner prep. Caterers moved like dancers. Plates were aligned with architectural precision. Wine glasses caught candlelight in soft flashes. I didn't join them for appetizers. I needed a moment. Alone in my room, I stood barefoot at the edge of the balcony, ocean stretching out like an endless blue dare. The air smelled like citrus and salt. Familiar, calming. But my mind wasn't here. It was in Spokane, 5 winters ago. I could still feel the sting of frozen fingertips trying to solder a busted chip heater. The bitterness of instant coffee at midnight, the ache in my back from sleeping on folded towels. Those nights had built me. Noor knocked, then stepped in. You sure about this? I'm not here for revenge, I said. She raised a brow. I smiled, just slightly. I'm here for recognition. The truth deserves a microphone. She gave a half nod. They're waiting. Let them. I pulled my hair back into a low bun, checked the slides one last time, and straightened the lapels of my black suit jacket. This wasn't war. This was the moment before. The lights dimmed at exactly 9 p.m. No announcement, no music, no grand entrance. Just silence, and then a low mechanical hum as a screen lowered from the ceiling. Some shifted in their chairs. Olivia glanced sideways at her wine. Calla blinked rapidly, probably expecting a welcome toast or an awkward slideshow. Instead, Noor handed me a remote clicker. I stepped forward. The only sound was the hush of ocean wind brushing the villa windows. This isn't a business pitch, I began, my voice even. It's a truth report. First slide. A grainy photo of me in the Spokane warehouse, bundled in layers, soldering boards next to a rusted space heater. I didn't explain it. Click. The next slide. Our early metrics, user growth charts, pilot studies with local farmers, ROI projections for our machine vision platform. Then I paired them. Every chart came with a quote. Gideon's email, she's delusional. Maris's voice memo, she just needs a real job. Calla's deleted post, tech cosplay. Laughter didn't come. No one breathed. I kept going. A shot of our Farmlands prototype at its first field test. Beside it, a text from Olivia in the family group chat. Maybe if Leora ever got out of the barn, she'd know how real tech works. I didn't glance their way, just spoke. I documented everything, not to embarrass you, but to show you what you missed. Click. A live map of global distribution partners, logos of Fortune 500 companies, articles quoting me on the future of agritech. Click. A headline: Leora Sullivan's vision raises $30 million Series B from West Coast Syndicate. Then I paused. Some of you laughed. Some of you rolled your eyes. Some of you cut me out of weddings and family photos. Click. Final slide. Kala's viral LinkedIn post, side by side with a leaked internal memo from her employer. Reputational risk. Probation. Content flagged for corporate review. Gasps. Noor didn't flinch. I didn't either. I looked straight at Kala. Some of you mocked what I built. Now you work for companies trying to hire me. I closed the laptop. Silence. Not the awkward kind, but the kind that follows an explosion. Gideon sat back, arms folded but quiet. Maris stared at the flickering candle. Olivia was frozen. Kala? Her face had drained of color. Theron finally broke the stillness. Why didn't you tell us? I met his eyes. I did. You just talked louder. That landed like a slap. Even Olivia winced. No one moved. No one reached for dessert. In that moment, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clear. I hadn't needed applause. I hadn't even needed apology. I just needed them to know. What they ignored wasn't invisible. And what they dismissed didn't disappear. It grew. The morning light spilled into the dining hall, warm and golden, as if nothing had happened the night before. But everything had. By the time I came down for coffee, half the family had already left. No goodbyes, no notes. On the kitchen counter sat a copy of Forbes, neatly folded, front page facing up. The Billionaire in Boots, How Leora Sullivan Outsmarted an Industry and Her Doubters. There was a photo of me standing in front of a green AI-powered field rig. I hadn't posed for it. They must have pulled it from an investor event last quarter. My phone buzzed. A string of texts filled the screen, some from cousins I hadn't heard from in years. Holy crap, Leora! Why didn't you ever say anything? Proud of you. I didn't reply to any of them. The family group chat was strangely quiet. Then a ping. Kala. PR asks that no one comment on Leora's story publicly. Thank you, and that was it. No apology, just corporate cleanup. Typical. By 10:15, I'd packed my things. While I zipped the final bag shut, there was a knock on my door. Maris stood there, her cardigan slightly misaligned, hair less perfect than usual. She didn't step inside, just looked at me for a long second before speaking. You deserved better, she said softly. I'm sorry I didn't see it then. I could have said 1,000 things, but instead, I just nodded. Thank you, that matters. Her eyes shimmered for a moment, then she turned and walked away. No hug, no big gesture. But it was something. Back in Spokane, the sky was pale and crisp. Noor had beaten me to the office. When I walked in, she grinned and pointed toward the glass wall. There, hung between our mission statement and a plaque from our first investor, was the framed Forbes cover. Beneath it, in a small wooden frame, sat an old photo I hadn't seen in years. Me, 24, crouched on a concrete floor in a winter coat, testing circuits by lamplight. I stepped closer, brushing a finger across the glass. That girl, she looked exhausted, but alive, driven. And maybe, just maybe, she'd be proud of the woman standing in front of her now. Later that night, I stayed late at the lab. The warehouse buzzed with low hums, machines calibrating, cooling fans whispering in the corners. I walked the aisles slowly, touching the edge of each new module we'd built. I passed the prototype room, the server stacks, and paused at the door marked Private Dev, LS. Inside, it was just me, just the hum of my work, my ideas, my space. I sat down at the workbench, clicked on my monitor, and opened a fresh planning doc. Across the top, I typed, 2026 Vision, Expand to Africa. Soil Imaging X, Crop Prediction Beta. I leaned back. They could keep their silence. They could pretend the article hadn't hit. But the world saw it now. And more importantly, so did I. Success didn't fix what they broke, but it gave me room to rebuild what they never took the time to see. I was dirty. My sister made fun of my bad job. 5 years later, my net worth ranking silenced her. Maybe you've been there too. Maybe you've had to sit quietly while people who were supposed to love you laughed at you, dismissed you, labeled you. Maybe you've walked away from comfort, family, approval, tradition, just to build something that felt right, even when no one clapped for you. If that's you, I want you to hear me when I say, your worth doesn't expire just because they couldn't see it. Not everyone gets a front row seat to your becoming, and that's okay. You're not building for applause, you're building for impact. What they call crazy, dirty, or a waste of time today might just be tomorrow's revolution. Don't hand the pen to people who never bothered to read your story. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever been underestimated or overlooked by your own family? What did that feel like, and how did you rise above it? Drop your story in the comments or simply type 1 if this hit home for you. And hey, tell me where you're watching from. I love knowing where this little corner of the internet reaches. If this story moved you, helped you reflect, or gave you strength to keep going, hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon so you don't miss the next story. There's more where this came from. Real voices, real lessons, and yes, real healing. Thanks for being here. You matter more than you know. Hi there, my name is Maddie Brooks, and I built a $50 million brand from the ground up. I gave everything to my company, late nights, endless sacrifices, every ounce of my ambition. And for what? To be called useless by my own sister? To have my father look me in the eye and tell me I didn't deserve the empire I created? It started with whispers, strange looks at a corporate gala that should have been my celebration. Then came the boardroom ambush. Sam, my own blood, standing there with legal documents that stripped me of my title, my legacy. And my father? He didn't stop her. He stood by and watched as I lost everything. They thought I'd disappear, that I'd break, that I'd accept my fate and fade into the background. But they forgot one thing. I built this company once. And I could take it back. The evening air was crisp as I stepped out of the black town car, my heels clicking against the marble pavement leading into the grand entrance of the Astoria. The gilded doors swung open, revealing a ballroom drenched in opulence. Gold chandeliers cast a soft glow over crisp white tablecloths, and the air carried the faintest hint of expensive champagne and polished ambition. Tonight was supposed to be a celebration. Brooke & Company had just secured its largest international deal, and I had spent the past 2 years orchestrating every detail. The contracts, the negotiations, the relentless hours, it had all led to this moment. But as I made my way inside, something felt off. The usual warmth I expected from familiar faces was absent. Instead, there were stolen glances, hushed conversations that fell silent the moment I walked by. Investors I had built relationships with for years gave me polite but distant nods. A murmur of unease curled at the edges of my thoughts, but I pushed it aside. This was my night, my success. Derek appeared by my side almost immediately, a glass of whiskey in his hand. His sharp gaze flickered toward me, scanning my face like he could already sense my unease. "You're late," he said, his voice low enough that only I could hear. I smirked, lifting my chin. "Not late, just arriving with impact." He exhaled through his nose, unimpressed. "Something's going on, Maddie." "I don't like it. Relax," I muttered, grabbing a flute of champagne from a passing server. "You're always suspicious before big events." His jaw tightened, but before he could respond, a ripple of attention shifted toward the entrance. The energy in the room changed instantly, drawing eyes away from me. I already knew who had arrived before I even turned. Sam. She stood poised at the top of the staircase, a vision of power in a shimmering midnight blue gown, her smile dazzling under the crystal chandeliers. While I had spent the last 2 years building the company, she had mastered the art of stealing the spotlight. A waiter moved past me, nearly brushing against my shoulder, and I caught the tail end of a hushed conversation nearby. She doesn't even see it coming. My grip on the champagne glass tightened. William Brooks, our father, was already making his way towards Sam, his expression softer than I'd seen in years. He clapped a hand on her back, turning toward the investors gathered nearby. "My daughter, Sam," he declared, his voice carrying across the room. "A natural leader, wouldn't you say?" The crowd nodded, murmured approval following his words. Not a single mention of the deal. Not a single mention of the years I had poured into making this night possible. The murmur in my head grew louder. Derek shifted beside me, setting his glass down with deliberate care. "You see what I mean now?" I forced a smile, lifting my champagne, as if to toast to nothing at all. It's just William being William. But I knew better. Something was happening, something big. I moved through the room, shaking hands, offering practice smiles, but my mind was elsewhere. The whispers, the stolen glances, Sam's too-perfect entrance. By the time dessert was served, I was barely touching the chocolate soufflé in front of me. The unease had curled into something heavier, sitting low in my stomach. I needed fresh air. Stepping out onto the balcony, I inhaled deeply, trying to shake the tension gripping my chest. The city stretched out before me, glittering and endless, but for the first time, I felt small. Derek's voice cut through the night air behind me. "Maddie, I need to talk to you." I turned, seeing the serious set of his jaw, the way his hands curled into fists at his sides. "There's something you don't know about tomorrow's board meeting." My pulse skipped. The cold air suddenly felt sharper, like a warning I had failed to see coming. "Maddie, sit down," William Brooks says, his voice colder than I have ever heard before. The conference room is eerily silent, save for the rhythmic ticking of the antique clock mounted on the wall. I glance around, taking in the unreadable expressions of the board members. The air is thick with something I can't quite place. Anticipation, tension, perhaps even regret. Sam sits beside William, her posture too poised, her lips curved in the faintest smirk. She doesn't even try to look surprised that I'm here. This isn't a meeting, it's an execution. Derek stands in the far corner, arms crossed, his face unreadable. But I know him too well. His jaw is tight, his stance rigid. He knows what's coming. William clears his throat, shifting in his seat like he's uncomfortable. But the glint in his eyes tells me otherwise. "Maddie, we've made a decision regarding the company's leadership." The room seems to close in. My fingers tighten around the edge of the chair, knuckles pressing white against my skin. Sam flips through a stack of papers in front of her, her nails tapping rhythmically against the polished wood table. She doesn't look at me. She doesn't have to. "Brook and Company needs a leader with a broader vision," she says smoothly. "Someone who understands the corporate world at a strategic level." I blink. "Excuse me?" She finally meets my gaze, and for a brief moment, I see the victory dancing in her eyes. Effective immediately, she continues, "I will be stepping in as the new CEO." The words land like a slap, a sharp, cold sting that leaves me breathless. My gaze snaps to William, expecting, no, needing him to say something, to stop this, to tell me this is a mistake. But he doesn't. Instead, he nods. "This is what's best for the company. I hope you'll understand, Maddie." Understand? I grip the chair tighter, my nails digging into the leather. My pulse pounds in my ears, but I force my voice to stay level. "You're removing me? After everything I've done for this company?" Sam leans forward, resting her chin on her interlaced fingers. "Did you really think you built this alone?" My stomach twists. She tilts her head, feigning sympathy. "While you were busy designing products and running day-to-day operations, I was securing the future. Investors need more than ideas, Maddie. They need leadership, stability, vision." My mouth parts, but no words come. William watches me, waiting for a response. But what can I possibly say? That I've dedicated my life to Brooke and Company? That I've bled for it, sacrificed for it? That every success they're celebrating came at the cost of my time, my energy, my very sense of self? And yet, here I am. Disposable. How long? My voice is quieter than I intend. Sam arches a brow. How long have you been planning this? She exhales, sitting back. Months. The answer slices through me. I look around the table, searching for something, someone, to contradict this, to say this isn't how things should be. But the faces staring back at me are blank. No one speaks. Even Derek, who hasn't moved from his corner, looks away. Unbelievable, I murmur. William leans back, clasping his hands. You'll receive a generous severance package, of course. My body turns cold. A severance package. Let's not be dramatic, Sam sighs. You'll be well taken care of. I stare at her, my chest rising and falling with barely contained fury. You'll regret this, Sam. Her smirk widens. Doubtful. The room feels suffocating. I push my chair back, the legs scraping against the hardwood as I stand. No one stops me. No one calls my name. My heels echo against the marble floor as I make my way to the exit, back rigid, chin high. But as I step into the elevator, the weight of it all crashes over me. My title, gone. My father, lost. My sister, my greatest enemy. The doors slide shut, trapping me in the suffocating silence. This isn't over, not even close. You really thought I'd just walk away? I say, my voice dangerously calm, as I meet Derek in a dimly lit cafe. The scent of freshly brewed coffee lingers in the air, but I barely register it. The city hums outside the rain-speckled windows, but the noise feels distant, irrelevant. My fingers drum against the ceramic cup in front of me, its warmth doing little to thaw the ice that has settled in my chest since this morning. Derek watches me carefully from across the table, his expression unreadable. Honestly, I wasn't sure, he admits. But I know you, Maddie. You don't quit. You don't back down. I let out a slow breath, tilting my head. Then why do I feel like I've already lost? He leans forward, elbows on the table. Because you're still in shock. But this isn't over, not even close. The weight of his words hangs between us, but doubt still gnaws at me. They humiliated me, Derek. Sam didn't just take my position, she took my legacy. And William, he let her. He exhales sharply. William made his choice, but that doesn't mean it was the right one. I shift my gaze toward the window, watching as headlights blur past on the wet pavement. The betrayal plays on repeat in my mind. Sam's smirk, William's cold nod, the silence of the boardroom as they collectively decided I was disposable. For the first time in my life, I don't know what to do next. Come on, Derek says suddenly, tapping his fingers against the table. We need a plan. I scoff, shaking my head. A plan? To do what? Sue my own company? Take Sam to court? She played this too well, Derek. She got to the investors first. She had months to prepare, and My voice falters. I didn't see it coming. Derek doesn't respond right away. Instead, he reaches into his briefcase and pulls out a worn manila folder. I frown. What's that? Your way back in. I glance between him and the folder, skepticism creeping into my tone. Derek, just look at it. I hesitate before taking the file, flipping it open. The moment my eyes land on the first page, my breath catches. It's an old contract, one from when I first helped restructure Brooke and Company after our international expansion. My fingers skim over the familiar legal jargon, memories flooding back. And then, I see it. A clause. Derek taps a highlighted section with the edge of his pen. You still own 49% of the company, Maddie, and this, he gestures toward the clause, gives you leverage. If Brooke and Company changes its core business model without your consent, you have the legal right to challenge their leadership and reclaim your stake. The words blur for a moment as I process what he's saying. I sit up straighter, And Sam doesn't know this? His lips twitch. I doubt she even remembers it exists. She was too busy playing politics while you were actually running the company. For the first time since this morning, something shifts inside me. A spark. A flicker of something dangerous and familiar. Hope. I close the folder and meet Derek's gaze. We need to make sure she takes the bait. She has to make a move that triggers this clause. Derek grins. Now that's the Maddie I know. Meanwhile, across the city, in a sleek office with floor-to-ceiling windows, Sam Brooks sits behind what used to be my desk. She leans back in her chair, scrolling through the flood of congratulatory emails, barely acknowledging the assistant placing a fresh coffee beside her. Her phone buzzes. A message from an anonymous number. Your sister built this company's reputation. You just took the title. Prove you deserve it. Her jaw clenches. Victory, it seems, is proving to be more complicated than she anticipated. Back in the cafe, I slip the contract into my bag, my mind already working through my next move. This isn't just about getting my job back. It's about taking everything. You don't just walk into my office without an appointment, Maddie, Sam hisses. But there's a flicker of fear in her eyes. I take my time, letting the weight of my presence settle into the space. The office is different, redesigned in Sam's image, with sleek black furniture and gold accents, the kind of decor that screams power and control. But beneath the polished surface, I see it for what it is. An illusion. I shut the door behind me and cross the room, my heels clicking against the marble floor. It used to be my office, I say evenly, settling into the chair across from her desk. I don't need an appointment. Sam leans back, draping an arm over the leather armrest, her smirk returning. You came to beg for your job back? Because if so, this is just sad. I smile, slow and deliberate. I came to remind you that I'm still here. She scoffs, tapping her nails against the glass surface of her desk. You don't have anything left, Maddie. No title, no authority, no leverage. She tilts her head slightly. You're irrelevant now. I fold my hands in my lap, keeping my expression unreadable. Then why do you sound nervous? The muscles in her jaw tighten for a fraction of a second before she masks it with a laugh. You're delusional. Maybe, I say lightly. Or maybe you're not as untouchable as you think. For the first time, uncertainty flickers in her gaze. Just a crack, but enough for me to see it. She straightens, smoothing the front of her blazer. You can glare at me all you want, but the fact remains, you lost. Brooke & Company is mine now. I hum under my breath, as if considering her words. Funny, that's exactly what I used to think. A flash of irritation crosses her face. She expected me to crumble. She wanted me to lash out in anger, to storm in here screaming about betrayal. But I won't give her the satisfaction. Instead, I rise from my seat with an air of indifference. Enjoy your throne while it lasts, Sam. Nothing stays the same forever. I turn and head for the door, leaving her staring after me. The moment I step into the hallway, the tension coiled in my muscles finally unwinds. The employees around me glance my way, some quickly looking away, others offering sympathetic half-smiles. But I don't stop to acknowledge them. Not yet. Outside the building, Derek waits by the curb, leaning against his car. He watches me carefully as I approach. How did it go? I exhale through my nose. She's predictable. That's good for us. Derek tilts his head. And? I slip on my sunglasses and smirk. She's scared. That night, I sit in a quiet corner of a high-end steakhouse, facing Richardson, one of Brooke & Company's biggest shareholders. The older man swirls the whiskey in his glass, studying me with sharp, assessing eyes. So, he says after a moment, what exactly are you proposing? I take a sip of my drink before meeting his gaze. A safety net, I say smoothly. For you, for the company. We both know Brooke & Company wasn't built on Sam's vision. Investors trusted me to steer the ship. But now she's at the helm, making reckless moves. Richardson strokes his chin, thoughtful. And what makes you so sure she'll fail? I set my glass down carefully. Because she thinks the title makes her untouchable, but the moment she shifts Brooke and Company's direction without investor consent, that illusion shatters. He doesn't respond immediately, but I see the gears turning. He may not be ready to commit yet, but he's intrigued, and that's all I need for now. Later that night, across the city, Sam sits at her desk, scrolling through reports when her phone buzzes. A message from an unknown number. Your sister is making moves. You need to stop her before she gets too far. Sam tightens her grip on the phone. She thought I would stay down. She thought wrong. Her laptop screen illuminates her face as she starts typing. If I want a war, she'll make sure it's a fight I won't survive. You need to be careful, Maddie, Derek warns. Sam won't hesitate to destroy you if she has to. She already tried, I mutter, stopping near the kitchen island. She stole my company. What more can she do? There's a pause. Then Derek exhales sharply. You're underestimating her. I don't respond. Because the truth is, I know he's right. Across town, in a high-rise office with floor-to-ceiling windows, Sam sits opposite a well-dressed man in a charcoal suit. We need to paint a different picture of Maddie, he says smoothly, flipping through a stack of documents. If we make people doubt her past leadership, they won't trust her comeback. Sam's lips curl into a slow smirk. And how do we do that? He leans forward, tapping a finger against the papers. We control the narrative, highlight every risk she took, every mistake she made, make them question whether she was really as competent as they believed. Sam nods. Do it. The next morning, my phone won't stop buzzing. I rub my temples before grabbing it off the counter, already bracing for whatever fresh hell is waiting for me. Derek's name flashes across the screen. You need to see this, he says the moment I answer. I open my laptop, navigating to Business Insider. My stomach clenches at the headline. Was Maddie Brooke's success a lie? Inside the questionable leadership of Brooke and Company, a sharp breath escapes me as I scan the article. It's a carefully crafted attack, full of half-truths and twisted facts. My leadership style is described as reckless, my business strategies labeled as risky gambles. Words like unstable and erratic are thrown in just enough to plant doubt. My hands tighten into fists. On the television across the room, CNBC is airing a panel discussion. The problem with Maddie Brooks, one commentator says, adjusting his tie, is that she never truly fit the mold of a traditional CEO. She was creative, sure, but creativity doesn't always translate to strong leadership. Another panelist nods. And let's not forget, Brooke and Company wasn't built in a vacuum. Her sister, Sam Brooks, has been instrumental in stabilizing the company's future. A bitter laugh escapes me. Stabilizing? She stole it. My phone rings again. Maddie, we have a problem, Derek says, voice sharp. Someone leaked internal documents, fake ones. They make it look like you were involved in financial mismanagement before you stepped down. The room tilts slightly. I grip the edge of the counter. What? It's bad, he continues. They're circulating through investor circles, and people are starting to question whether you really ran the company as cleanly as you claimed. My pulse pounds in my ears. Sam. It has to be her. I force myself to take a breath, shoving down the surge of anger rising in my chest. Can we prove they're fake? We're working on it, Derek says. But perception is everything, and right now, the perception is that you're a liability. I close my eyes for a brief second before opening them again. She's trying to erase me. She took my company. Now she wants my reputation too. But I won't let her have it. An hour later, I step into the boardroom of a downtown office. The sleek glass walls reflect the city skyline behind me, but I barely notice. A major investor is waiting inside. I take a steady breath and step forward. Then I see her. Sam is already sitting at the conference table, legs crossed, a knowing smirk on her face. Our eyes lock. This battle just became personal. You didn't think I'd just sit back and watch, did you? Sam smirks, crossing her arms. The conference room is thick with tension. the air almost stifling under the weight of expectation. A long mahogany table stretches between us, polished to a pristine shine that reflects the faces of the investors sitting on either side. I force myself to stay calm, my fingers tightening around the chair before I sink into it. Across from me, Sam leans back, every inch of her posture radiating arrogance. The investor at the head of the table, Mr. Caldwell, clears his throat. Maddie, there are serious concerns about your past leadership. Can you explain these financial discrepancies? I meet his gaze without hesitation. They're fabricated, I say smoothly, designed to discredit me. Caldwell raises an eyebrow. Fabricated? Before I can answer, Sam tilts her head, feigning curiosity. Are you saying the records are fake, Maddie? Because the board has seen them. My jaw clenches. She's good, twisting the narrative, making me look defensive before I can even present my side. I take a breath and straighten my shoulders. Let's be clear. This isn't about my past leadership. It's about control. Brooke & Company has thrived under my direction for years, and now that I'm gone, certain people are eager to rewrite history. A murmur ripples through the room. A few investors exchange glances, their confidence in Sam wavering. Good. I shift my focus to Caldwell. You all know my record. I built this company's brand. I turned it from a struggling name into an industry leader. You've seen the growth, the numbers, the client expansions. And now, suddenly, these so-called discrepancies appear the moment I challenge my removal? Sam exhales a short laugh, shaking her head. Conspiracies won't save you, Maddie. Facts will. I turn toward the investors, ignoring her. What you don't know, I continue, voice measured, is that someone inside Brooke & Company wants to change everything, including who owns it. Silence. Sam's fingers twitch slightly against the surface of the table. I press forward. You think this is about keeping Brooke & Company strong? Look deeper. Ask yourselves who benefits if I'm erased from the picture. The investors shift, uncertainty creeping into their expressions. I glance at Sam. Her lips tighten into a thin line. She knows I'm not just defending myself. I'm planting seeds of doubt in their minds. Caldwell exhales, rubbing his temples. We'll need to conduct our own internal review, he finally says, to verify these claims. Sam nods, recovering quickly. Of course, she says smoothly. Transparency is important. I stand. It certainly is. Our eyes lock once more, an unspoken warning passing between us. Later that night, my phone buzzes. Derek. I answer on the first ring. Tell me you have something. There's a pause. Then his voice drops, urgent. You're not going to believe this. I sit up, heart pounding. What? I just got intel. Sam had a private meeting with a rep from Lancaster Group last week. My stomach twists. The fashion conglomerate? The very one. I grip the phone tighter. Lancaster Group has been circling Brooke & Company for years, trying to acquire it. Sam isn't just trying to take control, she's trying to sell the company. Derek exhales. She's playing a whole different game, Maddie. I close my eyes briefly, letting the weight of it settle. Then I open them, staring out at the city skyline. My blood cools, my mind sharpening. If Sam wants to play dirty, I say, voice low, then let's see how she handles this. I need you to leak something to the press, I tell Derek, my voice steady. Sam's about to have a very bad week. Derek exhales, setting his drink down on the table between us. We're sitting in the dimly lit back room of a high-end steakhouse, tucked away from prying eyes. The rich scent of seared meat lingers in the air, but neither of us are paying attention to the food. You're sure about this? He asks, leaning forward. I meet his gaze. Absolutely. He studies me for a long moment before nodding. All right. What's the play? I slide my phone across the table, the screen displaying a confidential document, one that outlines Sam's private meetings with Lancaster Group, our biggest competitor. This, I say. Brooke & Company isn't just her pet project. She's looking for a buyer. Derek whistles under his breath. If the board finds out she's selling, they'll lose their minds. Exactly, I say. We need to time this perfectly. If the press gets wind of this before she has time to control the narrative, she won't be able to bury it. Derek taps his fingers against the table, thinking. I know a guy. A journalist over at the Wall Street Report. He's reliable, and he won't print anything without verification. Good, I say, my pulse steady, my mind sharp. Let's do it. Derek pulls out his laptop, fingers flying over the keys as he crafts the message. We attach the documents, careful to remove any trace of where they came from. The moment he hits send, there's no turning back. Now we wait. It doesn't take long. By the next morning, the headlines have already taken over the business world. Brooke & Company CEO Samantha Brooks in talks to sell company to rival corporation. Power move or betrayal? Sources say Brooke & Company may no longer be family-owned. I sit back on my couch, scrolling through article after article. It's working. The phone rings. Derek, did you see it? He asks, the grin in his voice evident. Oh, I saw it, I murmur. And so did the board. Inside Brooke & Company, Sam storms into the conference room, slamming the morning's paper down onto the table. The faces around her are grim. A senior board member, Mr. Hathaway, leans back in his chair, arms crossed. Explain this, Sam. Were you planning to sell us out? Sam straightens, smoothing her blazer. This is taken out of context, she says coolly. Lancaster Group was interested in a partnership, not an acquisition. Hathaway isn't buying it. A partnership? Funny, because the Wall Street Report seems to think otherwise. Another board member, Ms. Langford, raises an eyebrow. Sam, we backed you because you promised stability. This question mark, this is not stability. Sam clenches her jaw. I have everything under control. No one looks convinced. Her hands tighten into fists beneath the table. She knows exactly who's behind this. Later, that night, I'm in my apartment, pouring a glass of whiskey, when my phone pings with an email notification. The sender is anonymous. The subject line reads, You need to see this. Frowning, I open it. Inside is a single message. I have information that can help you. Meet me tomorrow at 8 p.m. Don't trust anyone. I stare at the words, my heart pounding. Derek looks over from where he's seated. What is it? I turn the screen toward him, his brows furrow. That could be a setup. Or it could be the break we need, I counter. A heavy silence stretches between us. I look back at the email, my fingers hovering over the reply button. If this is real, I might have just found my way back into Brooke & Company. If it's a setup, I could lose everything. Are you sure about this, Maddie? Derek asks. This could be dangerous. I glance at him from the driver's seat, gripping the wheel a little tighter. The city lights blur past as I navigate the downtown streets, heading toward the meeting location. The weight of what I'm about to do sits heavy in my chest, but there's no room for hesitation now. I don't have a choice, I say, voice steady. If this person has real intel on Sam, I need to hear it. Derek exhales, rubbing his temple. Just don't let your guard down. Whoever this is, they reached out anonymously for a reason. I nod, but keep my eyes on the road. He's right, of course. This could be a setup. But if there's even a chance that I can get something on Sam, something real, I have to take it. The bar is tucked away in a quiet part of the city, the kind of place that doesn't ask questions. A red neon sign flickers above the entrance, casting a dim glow onto the wet pavement. I park, turning off the engine, and glance at Derek. You stay out here, I say. His brows knit together. Maddie, I need to do this alone. He doesn't like it, but after a long moment, he nods. Fine, but I'll be watching. I step out of the car and into the dimly lit bar. The smell of aged whiskey and cigarette smoke clings to the air, and low jazz hums from the speakers. A few patrons sit scattered around, lost in their drinks and conversations, oblivious to my arrival. I scan the room. Then I see her. A woman, mid-40s, with sharp eyes and an air of quiet authority, sitting at a corner booth. Her blonde hair is pulled back into a low bun, and she stirs a drink absently, but her gaze is fixed on me the moment I step inside. I make my way over, sliding into the seat across from her. "Madeline Brooks?" she asks, voice hushed but firm. I nod. "You know my name. What's yours?" She glances around before leaning in slightly. "Eleanor Grayson, Senior Financial Officer at Brooke & Company." My breath stills for half a second. "You worked for my father," I murmur. "I did," she confirms. "And now I work for your sister, but not for much longer." I narrow my eyes. "Why are you helping me?" Eleanor exhales, reaching into her bag and pulling out a small USB drive. She places it on the table between us. "Because what Sam is doing isn't just unethical, it's illegal." I stare at the drive, heart hammering. "What's on it?" "Financial records," Eleanor says. "Real ones." Sam manipulated the company's books to inflate revenue numbers. She needed them to look solid when she took over, needed the board to trust her leadership. But the truth? She's been funneling money into private accounts, falsifying reports to make it seem like Brooke & Company is thriving under her watch. If this gets out, she's finished. I don't reach for the drive yet. I keep my expression unreadable, even as adrenaline courses through me. "You're sure about this?" I ask. Eleanor nods. "I've been gathering proof for weeks. The numbers don't lie, Maddie. Your sister built her empire on fraud, and if she's willing to do this, who knows what else she's planning?" I finally pick up the drive, turning it over between my fingers. This is it. This is what I need to take her down, not just in the court of public opinion, but legally. "You should be careful," Eleanor warns. "Sam isn't stupid. She'll realize someone on the inside gave this to you." I slip the drive into my pocket. "Let her." Meanwhile, at Brooke & Company, Sam stands in her office, arms crossed, as she stares at the security logs on her laptop. Someone has been accessing restricted files. Someone from her own company. Her lips press into a thin line as she leans back in her chair. She should have known. "Whoever it is," she murmurs, fingers tapping against the desk, "they won't get away with it." Back at Maddie's apartment, Derek paces as I plug the USB drive into my laptop, pulling up the files. The screen floods with documents, spreadsheets, transaction logs, financial reports, all of it meticulously detailed. "Jesus," Derek mutters. "She really did it." I scroll through the evidence, my pulse steady. "This is enough to challenge her legally," I say. "With these records, we can prove she lied to the board." Derek nods, but his expression is cautious. "Then we move carefully. She'll try to cover her tracks the second she finds out we have this." My laptop dings with a new message. I frown, clicking it open. A single text from an unknown number. "Nice move, Maddie. But do you really think I wouldn't find out?" My stomach clenches. Derek steps closer, reading over my shoulder. Shit. I grip my phone, my heart racing. The real war has just begun. She knows, Derek. We have to move fast before she destroys the evidence. I pace the length of Derek's office, my hands clenched at my sides. The room is dim, the only light coming from the desk lamp illuminating the mess of papers, files, and the open laptop in front of us. Every second counts. Derek rubs his temples before exhaling sharply. "We need to verify everything first. If we make a move, and there's even a tiny mistake, Sam will spin it against you." I stop pacing and grip the back of the chair. "Then we work through the night." He nods, already pulling up the spreadsheets. The USB drive Eleanor gave me contains months of manipulated records, numbers doctored to make Brooke & Company look stronger than it actually is. Transactions funneled into hidden accounts, inflated revenue reports. It's all here, black and white. And if we don't act soon, Sam will bury it. I grab my phone, scrolling through my contacts. There are investors who still believe in me, people who trusted my leadership before Sam forced me out. If I leak the right details, I can plant enough doubt that the board will have no choice but to demand answers. Derek looks up from his screen. "What's your plan?" I meet his gaze. I'm going to give them something they can't ignore. I start with Mrs. Linton, a longtime shareholder, a woman who built her empire from the ground up and doesn't tolerate dishonesty. I type a message, attaching a snippet of the manipulated financial statements. Mrs. Linton, you've always valued integrity in business. I thought you should see this before you hear it from someone else. I press send and lean back, my pulse steady. The message is vague but effective. It won't take her long to realize what's happening. Derek watches me. And now? Now, I say. We wait. The response comes faster than expected. Maddie! What the hell is this? Call me. I glance at Derek before dialing her number. She picks up immediately. Is this real? She demands, skipping pleasantries. Sam's been lying about the financials? I keep my voice even. I wouldn't bring this to you if I wasn't certain. And it's only the tip of the iceberg. Silence. Then, in a quieter voice, does the board know? Not yet, I admit. But they will soon. A sharp breath on the other end. I want a full financial report on my desk by the end of the week. And if this turns out to be true, Sam is finished. I smile. I was hoping you'd say that. By morning, the rumors are already circulating. Investors are whispering. The board is uneasy. And Sam? She's furious. She storms into Brook & Company, slamming her office door so hard the walls shake. Her assistant flinches as she tosses a folder onto her desk. Find out who's leaking information, she snaps. The assistant nods quickly and scurries out. Sam exhales, pressing her fingers against her temples. This isn't part of the plan. The company was supposed to be under her complete control by now. But Maddie, damn her, just won't stay down. She straightens, fixing her blazer. Fine. If Maddie wants a fight, Sam will give her one. That afternoon, the board receives an emergency meeting notice. Sam's name is stamped at the bottom. She's trying to get ahead of this, trying to control the damage before it spreads too far. But it's too late. As the board gathers in the glass-walled conference room, the tension is thick. Some members exchange skeptical glances. Others tap their fingers against the polished table, waiting. Sam stands at the head of the room, expression composed. These rumors are designed to destabilize our company, she begins smoothly. We need to stand united against misinformation and speculation. A few nod. Others remain silent. Then the doors swing open. I step inside. A slow, confident smile spreads across my face as I take a seat at the table, directly across from Sam. She stiffens. You're not supposed to be here, she says coldly. I fold my hands in front of me. Oh, I think you'll want to hear what I have to say. Sam's expression darkens. The game has changed, and this time, I'm the one holding the cards. Ladies and gentlemen, I have something very interesting to show you. I place a thick folder on the conference table, my fingers pressing against the manila edges as I glance around the room. The tension is suffocating, but I remain calm, controlled. Every pair of eyes is locked on me, but the one I care about most belongs to my sister. Sam sits rigidly across from me, her arms crossed, jaw tight. She doesn't blink, but I see the way her fingers twitch against the table, the way her nails dig into the polished wood. She's nervous. Good. I flip the folder open, revealing the printed spreadsheets, transaction records, and internal emails that Eleanor provided. My voice is even, but the weight of my words fills every inch of the room. These documents show discrepancies in Brook & Company's financial reports, discrepancies that started when Sam took over as CEO. A murmur spreads across the table. Board members lean in, eyes scanning the papers, as the reality of the situation begins to sink in. Sam scoffs. This is nonsense. Maddie is just bitter about losing her position. I smile. Am I? I slide a specific page forward, tapping my finger against a column of numbers. Then explain this. Revenue inflation, falsified profit margins, and accounts that don't exist. All of it conveniently benefiting you, Sam. But I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation. Her nostrils flare. You're grasping at straws, she says, voice sharp. This is nothing but a desperate attempt to undermine me. I shrug. Then you won't mind if we conduct a full audit, will you? The room goes silent. I turn my head toward Mr. Caldwell, a senior board member who has been with the company since my father founded it. He leans back in his chair, rubbing his chin thoughtfully before looking at Sam. "That's a fair request," he says. "If there's nothing to hide, then an external investigation should clear everything up, right?" For the first time, genuine fear flashes in Sam's eyes. She opens her mouth, ready to argue, but before she can speak, another voice cuts through the room. Sam, Richard Greer, one of her strongest allies on the board, clears his throat. He adjusts his glasses, looking at her with something that resembles disappointment. "I've stood by you, but I can't ignore these numbers. If you can't explain them, I won't support you anymore." Sam stiffens. Her hands curl into fists. I see it. The moment she realizes she's losing control. The walls she built are beginning to crack. "This is ridiculous," she spits out, but her voice lacks the confidence it held before. "Maddie is manipulating you all. She's playing a game, trying to get revenge because she lost." I tilt my head. "You're right about one thing," I say. "I did lose something. But it wasn't just my position. It was my trust in you." The weight of my words lingers in the air. Silence. Then Mr. Caldwell speaks again, his voice firm. "I'm calling for an external investigation into Brooke and Company's finances, effective immediately." A ripple of agreement spreads through the room. Some nod. Others exchange cautious glances. But no one objects. The decision is made. Sam pushes back from the table, her chair scraping against the floor. "You'll regret this," she says through clenched teeth. I meet her glare head-on. "I doubt it." She storms out, leaving the tension thick behind her. I exhale, barely audible, before glancing at Derek. "This isn't over yet," I whisper as we exit the boardroom, the hum of murmured voices following us. "But we just made her bleed." I walk down the hallway, feeling the tide turning in my favor for the first time. "We need to prepare for whatever Sam does next," I say, my voice firm. "She won't go down without a fight." Derek leans against his desk, arms crossed. "She's cornered, Maddie. That makes her dangerous." I know he's right. Sam doesn't lose. At least, not without taking someone else down with her. As the sun sets over Manhattan, I watch the city from Derek's office window. The battle isn't over. If anything, it's about to get uglier. Sam slams her office door so hard that a picture frame rattles on the wall. She paces, her mind racing. She lost control in that boardroom. Maddie humiliated her. And now, with an external investigation looming over Brooke and Company, the walls are closing in. Her assistant hesitates at the door. "Ms. Brooks, I have the investor reports you asked for." Sam snatches them, scanning the pages. Investors are worried. Shares have fluctuated since the financial leak. Calls are pouring in. She clenches her teeth. "This is Maddie's doing." Sam inhales sharply, pushing her hair back. If she wants to win, she needs to shift the narrative. She needs to remind everyone who the real Maddie Brooks is. She grabs her phone. "Get me a primetime interview, CNBC or Bloomberg. I don't care which. Just make it happen." Her assistant rushes out, and Sam smirks. If Maddie thinks she's the only one who can manipulate public perception, she's in for a surprise. I sit across from Richard Greer, one of the company's major investors, at an upscale restaurant in Midtown. The air smells of grilled steak and aged wine, but I have no appetite. Richard swirls his glass of bourbon, watching me. "You've put Sam in a bad position," he says, amusement flickering in his eyes. I meet his gaze. "Sam put herself in a bad position. I just exposed it." He chuckles. "Fair enough. But you know what's coming next, don't you?" I nod. "She's not just going to sit back. She'll try to regain control." He leans forward, resting his elbows on the table. "I'll be honest, Maddie. I've been skeptical about Sam's leadership for a while. If you can stabilize things, you'll have my full backing." Relief swells in my chest, but I don't let it show. That's all I needed to hear. The next morning, Sam sits in front of a camera, her face calm and collected, Brooke and Company has always been my father's legacy, she tells the interviewer. It's heartbreaking to see it torn apart by personal vendettas. The journalist tilts her head. You're referring to your sister? Sam sighs, looking away briefly before meeting the camera again. Maddie is passionate, but she's letting emotions dictate her actions. I'm trying to lead this company into the future. She's trying to pull it into the past. The interview airs within hours. News outlets pick up the sound bites. Sam is painting herself as the victim, the responsible leader trying to steer the company through chaos. I watch it play out on a loop in Derek's office, my arms crossed as frustration builds inside me. Derek exhales. She's good, I'll give her that. I shake my head. She's lying through her teeth. But people believe her, he points out. At least some do. I glance at my phone. Investors are calling, wanting reassurances. I'm about to respond when an alert flashes across my screen. A news headline. Maddie Brooks's troubled past. The untold story behind Brooke and Company. I freeze. My stomach twists as I click the link. The article is full of half-truths, exaggerations twisted just enough to make me look reckless, impulsive. It digs up old business decisions, mistakes that were rectified but now seem damning. It even hints at personal struggles, things that have no place in a business conversation. Sam just made this personal, I mutter. Derek skims the article. She's trying to discredit you, make you look unstable. I grip the edge of his desk, my nails pressing into the wood. I won't let her win. The next morning, as I step out of my car in front of Brooke and Company, reporters swarm like vultures. Cameras flash. Maddie, do you have a response to the allegations? Is it true you've been unstable for years? Do you plan to step away from Brooke and Company entirely? I straighten my shoulders, keeping my face unreadable. Sam wanted a war? She was about to get one. Get me a press conference, I say, my eyes blazing. It's time to set the record straight. Derek gives me a sharp nod before pulling out his phone. This is risky, Maddie, he warns. Once you speak, you can't take it back. I don't need to take it back, I reply. I just need to make sure the truth drowns out Sam's lies. The conference room at the Four Seasons is packed. Reporters fill the seats, cameras pointed at the podium where I stand. The air crackles with tension. I glance at Derek standing in the back, his arms crossed, nodding once. He believes in me, that's enough. I step forward, my voice steady. I won't let lies define me. I scan the crowd, letting the silence stretch before continuing. The real issue here isn't my personal life, it's the future of Brooke and Company. Flashes from the cameras flicker as I continue. My leadership has been called into question. But let's talk facts. I built this brand. I expanded our reach, secured major partnerships, and brought in billions. And yet, my qualifications are being questioned because of a desperate smear campaign. A murmur ripples through the crowd. I flip open the folder on the podium, revealing slides behind me on the projector. This is Brooke and Company's financial trajectory during my tenure, I say, gesturing to the chart. We experienced record-breaking growth. Now let's look at the numbers since my removal. The graph shifts. The numbers show a clear decline under Sam's leadership. The room goes silent. Facts don't lie, I say. And neither do I. The tension is thick. A journalist in the front row raises his hand. So you're saying your sister is unfit to lead? I pause, choosing my words carefully. I'm saying Brooke and Company deserves leadership that doesn't rely on deception. I'm saying this company, which my father built and I helped elevate, deserves better. Another journalist jumps in. Are you pushing for her removal? I don't hesitate. I'm pushing for what's best for this company. If the board believes that's me, then I'm ready to step up. Meanwhile, across the city, Sam watches the press conference from her office. Her nails dig into the armrest of her chair, her knuckles white. She's turning them against me, she hisses, her voice sharp with rage. Her assistant shifts uncomfortably, but doesn't say a word. Sam throws a glass at the wall, the shatter echoing through the room. Get me in front of a camera, she snaps. We need to counter this now. Her assistant hesitates. Actually, there's something else you should see. She hands Sam an envelope marked confidential. Sam rips it open, scanning the contents. Her breath catches. It's the results of the financial audit. She flips through the pages, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. Severe financial discrepancies under the current leadership. Multiple unapproved transactions tied to offshore accounts. Sam's stomach twists. If this report gets out, she's finished. She slams the folder shut. Nobody sees this. Understood? Her assistant nods quickly. Yes, ma'am. But Sam knows. The board will see it. And when they do, it won't matter what she says. That night, I sit with Derek, going over the numbers once again. You did what you had to do, he says. The investors are responding. You've got more support than ever. I nod, exhaling. It's not over yet. Derek's phone buzzes. He glances at the screen, then looks up at me. The board just called an emergency meeting. I straighten. When? Tomorrow morning. I meet his gaze. This is it. The final battle. We will now take the final vote, the board chair announces. The future of Brooke & Company depends on this decision. The conference room is silent, except for the ticking of the antique clock mounted on the far wall. The weight of this moment presses down on everyone seated around the long mahogany table. I sit at one end, my hands clasped together, my posture unwavering. Across from me, Sam reclines in her chair, her expression carefully composed. But I know her too well. Beneath the poised exterior, she's unraveling. Our father, William Brooks, sits near the edge of the room, arms crossed, his face unreadable. He hasn't spoken much, merely observing as his daughters battle for control of his empire. His silence carries more power than anything he could say. Before we vote, both parties may present their final statements. The board chair continues. Ms. Brooks, you may begin. Sam straightens, smoothing a hand over the lapel of her expensive blazer. When she speaks, her voice is silk, calm, controlled, and insidiously persuasive. Under my leadership, Brooke & Company has pursued bold new strategies, taking aggressive steps toward modernizing our business model. The last thing we need is to revert to the past. She flicks a glance at me. A calculated move, implying that my reinstatement would be a step backward. She continues, pulling up a financial presentation on the boardroom screen. Here, you'll see the initiatives I have implemented to position us for global expansion. These figures represent progress. The future of Brooke & Company depends on forward momentum, not nostalgia. She smiles, the picture of confidence. A brilliant performance, except for one problem. She's lying. I wait for her to finish, allowing the room to sit in her deception for a few beats before standing. I don't rush. I don't react. I simply rise, straighten my shoulders, and walk to the head of the table. Leadership is not just about ambition, I say, my voice steady. It's about trust. A few members of the board shift in their seats, intrigued. This company wasn't built on deception. It was built on integrity, on innovation, and on relationships. That is what made Brooke & Company thrive. But that trust has been violated. I reach for the folder I placed on the table earlier and flip it open, pulling out the financial audit results. I let the silence linger before sliding copies to each board member. The audit committee has uncovered severe financial misconduct, discrepancies in our reporting, unapproved transactions, a pattern of reckless decisions that have put this company at risk. I see it now. The tiny crack in Sam's armor, a flicker of panic in her eyes. She knew the audit would be damaging, but she thought she could contain it. You want to talk about leadership, Sam? I continue, my voice growing sharper. Then let's talk about accountability, because that is what leadership looks like. A heavy silence falls. The board members murmur among themselves, flipping through the documents. Some frown, some shake their heads. The weight of what they're seeing is sinking in. Sam recovers quickly, scoffing. This is a smear campaign. Numbers don't lie, I counter. And neither do forensic audits. I turn to the board. You have a decision to make. Not just about leadership, but about the values this company stands for. The choice is yours. The board chair leans forward. It is time for the vote. Each member will submit their decision privately. The room is thick with tension as the votes are cast. I keep my expression neutral, but my heart pounds. Sam sits rigidly, her fingers curled into fists beneath the table. The board chair tallies the votes, pausing when he reaches the last one. His gaze flickers toward William Brooks. "Mr. Brooks," he says, "as founder, your vote will break the tie." The room stills. I hold my breath. Sam does too. Dad looks at the documents spread before him. He exhales, slow and measured. When he finally lifts his gaze, his expression is unreadable. Then he speaks. "My vote." He pauses, and my pulse races. Goes to Maddie. The air shifts, a sharp intake of breath from Sam. A few exchanged glances among the board members. It's done. The board chair clears his throat. With the majority vote, the board has decided to reinstate Maddie Brooks as CEO of Brook & Company. I release a slow breath, keeping my posture steady. I feel Derek's eyes on me from the other side of the room, but I don't turn. I look at Sam instead. She's motionless, her face blank, but her grip on the armrest of her chair is tight, white-knuckled. Then, slowly, she rises. Her movements are deliberate, controlled, but I can see it, the rage beneath her carefully constructed facade. The way her jaw tenses, the way her nostrils flare just slightly. She looks at me, and when she speaks, her voice is low, venomous. "This isn't over," she whispers. A chill moves down my spine, but I don't flinch. I meet her gaze, unwavering. "Now what?" Derek asks as I stand in the CEO's office, looking at the city below. I don't answer right away. The view stretches endlessly, lights flickering like tiny stars across the skyline. A city that never stops moving, never stops pushing forward. And now, Brook & Company is mine. I should feel victorious, triumphant, but all I feel is exhaustion settling deep in my bones. Derek steps closer. "Maddie?" I blink, snapping back to the moment. "It's done," I say, my voice barely above a whisper. "Sam is gone. Brook & Company is mine." The words should feel satisfying, but they don't. Derek studies me for a long moment before nodding. "I'll make sure the transition is smooth. The board is already preparing the public announcement." I nod mechanically. Everything is in motion. Everything I fought for is happening. Then why does it feel so empty? Later that evening, I hear a knock at my office door. I expect Derek, maybe a board member. Instead, it's him, William Brooks. He steps inside without waiting for permission, just as he always has. The presence of the man who built this empire is still commanding, even after everything. "You did it," he says, his voice unreadable. I cross my arms. "Looks like I did." He sighs, walking toward the window, mirroring my earlier stance. "I built this company from nothing," he murmurs, staring out at the city. "And I never thought I'd see it nearly destroyed by my own daughters." A sharp pang cuts through me, but I keep my expression neutral. "Funny," I say. "Maybe if you'd paid attention to us, things would have gone differently." He exhales, rubbing his temples. "I should have handled things differently," he admits. "I should have been a better father to both of you. I don't know what to feel. For so long I wanted this. Acknowledgement. An admission of failure. But now that I have it, it feels hollow." He turns, looking at me. "Brook & Company is yours now. But remember, power isn't the same as leadership. Don't make the same mistakes I did." For a brief second, I see something. Regret? Maybe. Then, just like that, he walks out. I don't stop him. Hours later, I sit alone at my desk. The silence is deafening. My laptop glows in the dim light, emails flooding in from board members, investors, the press. Everyone wants a statement. Everyone wants to know what comes next. I reach for my phone instead, needing a distraction. And that's when I see it. A text. Unknown number. You may have won this round, but I'll always be a Brooks. This isn't over. A chill runs down my spine. Sam. I stare at the message, fingers hovering over the screen. For a second, I consider responding, demanding answers, acknowledging the war that will never truly end between us. Instead, I delete it. But I know, deep down, I haven't seen the last of her. I turn off my phone and walk to the window. I won. But at what cost? Now what? Derek asks as I stand in the CEO's office, looking at the city below. I don't answer immediately. The skyline stretches far beyond my window, glittering under the night sky. The city moves forward, indifferent to what just happened inside these walls. Brooke & Company is mine. I fought for this. I bled for this. So why does it feel like I've lost more than I've won? Derek steps closer. Maddie? I exhale, pressing my fingers against the cool glass. It's over. He studies me, his expression unreadable. Is it? I don't know. Later that evening, I hear a knock at my door. I already know who it is before turning around. William Brooks steps inside, his presence filling the space with something heavy, something unresolved. The office was his once, now it belongs to me. You did it, he says. His voice holds no pride, no regret, just a simple statement of fact. I nod. I did. He moves toward the window, mirroring my stance from earlier. I built this company from nothing, he says, almost to himself, and I never thought I'd see it nearly destroyed by my own daughters. I don't flinch. Maybe if you'd treated us like daughters instead of business assets, things would have gone differently, I say evenly. A sigh escapes him, deep and tired. I should have handled things differently, he admits. I should have been a better father to both of you. A bitter laugh rises in my throat. And yet, here we are. He turns, looking at me for a long moment. Brooke & Company is yours now. Don't make the same mistakes I did. For the first time, there's something almost vulnerable in his face. And then, without another word, he leaves. He doesn't say goodbye. I don't stop him. The night stretches long and silent. I sit at my desk, scanning through endless emails, congratulations from board members, inquiries from investors, interview requests from the press. Everyone wants to hear from the new CEO of Brooke & Company, the company I fought for, the company I won back. And yet, I've never felt more alone. I pick up my phone, needing some kind of distraction, and that's when I see it. A message. Unknown number. You may have won this round, but I'll always be a Brooks. This isn't over. I stare at the screen. Sam. The weight in my chest tightens. I hover over the message, debating whether to respond, to demand answers, to ask her what she really means. Instead, I delete it. Because I know the truth. She's right. It isn't over. I turn off my phone and walk back to the window. I won. But at what cost? A month later, I stand in front of an audience, about to deliver the most important speech of my career. The lights are blinding, the crowd impossibly large. Business leaders, young entrepreneurs, and media representatives fill the auditorium, waiting. I grip the podium, inhaling deeply. This moment, this stage, is nothing like the battles I fought behind closed doors. Yet, in many ways, it is the culmination of them. I scan the audience, my heart steady. Then, I begin. A year ago, I thought success meant winning at all costs. I believed power was the only thing that mattered. That control was the only way to secure my future. A murmur ripples through the room. They came here expecting numbers, financial projections, and a carefully scripted corporate agenda. But I'm giving them something else. I let my voice soften, but I was wrong. Silence stretches as they wait for me to continue. Leadership isn't just about power. It's about vision. It's about trust. And sometimes, it's about knowing when to let go. As I speak, memories flash through my mind, fragments of the war I fought. The boardroom, Sam's smirk as she announced my removal. Derek, pressing legal documents into my hands, urging me to fight. The whispers, the headlines, the accusations that tried to break me. My father, watching it all unfold from the sidelines, saying nothing. Sam's venomous words before the final vote. I pushed the memories aside, refocusing on the room in front of me. Brooke and Company is no longer just my father's legacy, I say, lifting my chin. It's a company built on resilience, on reinvention, on the strength of those who refuse to be underestimated. The audience erupts into applause. I let the noise settle before offering one final statement. And we are just getting started. Later, in my office, the echoes of the event still linger. Messages flood my inbox. Congratulations, interview requests, new business proposals. The weight of leadership has settled on my shoulders, but for the first time, it doesn't feel like a burden. It feels like mine. I pour myself a drink, savoring the quiet. That's when I see it. An envelope, sleek and black, resting neatly on my desk. There's no sender listed. Curious, I pick it up and slide out the card inside. A simple invitation, a new startup launch, and at the bottom, a handwritten note. See you at the top. S. I blink, reading it twice. Then I laugh softly, shaking my head. Sam. Even now she's making moves. Even now she refuses to disappear. A part of me wonders, will we ever stop circling each other? Will we ever be anything but rivals? I set the card down, exhaling slowly. I don't know what comes next. But I do know one thing. I'm ready. I turn toward the window, looking out over the city. Then I whisper to myself, bring it on. Life isn't just about winning, it's about resilience, about fighting for what's yours, but also knowing when to let go. Every challenge, every betrayal, every loss, it all shapes who we become. I stand here today, not because I never failed, but because I never stopped moving forward. Strength isn't about never falling, it's about rising every single time. If my journey has taught me anything, it's this. Your value isn't defined by what you lose, but by how you rise again. Subscribe now, because your story is just beginning. Hello, my name's Eden. I'm 13, and I used to think the worst thing my family could do was forget to pick me up from school, but that was before my uncle offered to take us on a camping trip, just a fun weekend in the woods, he said. He drugged my parents, hid them beneath the floorboards of a cabin no one ever checked, told everyone they left me behind because they couldn't handle me. Now he's smiling on TV, spending our money, calling himself my savior. I called 911. They told me I sounded confused. But what if I wasn't? What if everything he buried is still breathing, and I'm the only one who hears it? It had been nearly a full day since I came home from that cursed camping trip, and yet nothing felt real. My jeans were still dusty, the back of my neck sunburned from the hike, and the pine smell from the woods still clung to my sleeves. I stood barefoot in the middle of my grandmother's kitchen in Asheville, staring at the bright yellow tile floor like it might split open and explain everything. But nothing did. "You're safe now, honey," Odessa had said, patting my shoulder without meeting my eyes. She was my dad's mother and had always had this way of making everything seem like a polite inconvenience. When I stumbled into her house alone, covered in dirt and dragging my backpack behind me, she didn't scream or cry. She didn't ask where Mom and Dad were. She just made me toast. I tried to tell her. I did. I told her how Uncle Delmar said it would be just a quick weekend trip to the cabin in Pisgah, how we went on a hike that morning and then everything went wrong, how my parents passed out after drinking from water bottles Delmar handed them, and how he told me to go to bed early like a good girl while he dragged them back into the cabin. But she didn't even flinch. Instead, she smiled politely and said, "You've been through a lot. You need to rest." Rest. I wasn't sure how anyone expected me to close my eyes after what I saw. Later that afternoon, one of my aunts, maybe Karen or Julie, I couldn't remember which, leaned over to Odessa and whispered, "She's probably just overwhelmed. Maybe it's a reaction to the trauma." I heard every word. I sat right there on the couch with a blanket around my shoulders, like a stray animal they didn't know what to do with. Delmar came into the house not long after, dressed in pressed slacks and a soft blue shirt. He looked like he'd walked out of a church bulletin. He set his keys down on the counter and gave me the warmest, most rehearsed smile I've ever seen. "Hey, sweetheart," he said, reaching out like he meant to hug me. "Tough weekend, huh?" I backed away. His smile didn't flicker. He didn't need to say a word. His grip on the room was tight. Too tight. "I told Odessa everything," I said, my voice shaking. "I told her what you did." There was a pause. A shift. Just for a second, the mask dropped. Then he chuckled. "Dreams feel real when we're scared, Eden. It's okay to blur the lines." I looked at Odessa. She looked at her shoes. That night, after being told to get some sleep more times than I could count, I locked myself in the guest room. The bed creaked like it hadn't been used in years. I sat cross-legged with a stack of printer paper and a set of cheap markers I found in an old drawer. I started to draw. Mom's eyes, the ropes on her wrists, the trap door in the cabin floor, the boots Delmar wore. I didn't know what else to do. If I couldn't get them to listen, I'd make them see. I laid each page out in a row on the kitchen table the next morning. Odessa walked right by them. So did Delmar. By lunch, they were gone. The house smelled faintly of smoke. I followed it to the backyard, where the metal fire pit was still warm. Ashes fluttered in the wind, some of them the same off-white as my paper. "You shouldn't leave things lying around," Delmar said, strolling up behind me. "Not everything belongs in the real world." I turned to face him, heart pounding. They weren't dreams. He crouched beside the fire pit and poked at the ashes with a stick, like he was roasting marshmallows. "Let's not confuse memories with nightmares, okay?" I couldn't speak. Not then. Not when the only proof I had was turning into ash at my feet. Later that day, I tried once more to talk to Odessa. "I know you don't want to believe me," I said, standing stiff in the hallway while she sorted mail. "But I didn't imagine it. He took them." She didn't even stop sorting. "You're 13, Eden. You've been through something terrible, and I know you miss your parents." "That's not, let the adults take care of things," she cut in. "You just focus on healing." That word again. Healing, like I'd scraped my knee instead of watched my family disappear. I spent the rest of the day in silence. I didn't eat dinner. I didn't speak when Delmar checked in on me. I just stared out the window as the sun dipped behind the trees. When darkness settled across the yard, I stepped into the hallway. The door to my parents' old room stood wide open, the light off, the bed untouched. It felt like a hole had been punched into the center of the house, like everything was still, waiting. I stood there for a long time, barefoot on the hardwood floor, arms wrapped around my middle. Then I whispered, "If they won't listen, I'll make them hear me another way." I held that birth certificate in my hands longer than I should have. My fingers ran along the edge of the paper like it was a lifeline. My mother's handwriting was scribbled along the margin, not official, not neat, but it was hers, and it whispered louder than anyone in that house ever had. She hadn't abandoned me. She wouldn't. I folded the paper carefully and slid it beneath the mattress in the guest room, the one that still smelled faintly of lavender and mothballs. As I sat on the edge of the bed, my ears caught the low murmur of voices drifting up from downstairs. Odessa's voice was soft, almost dismissive, but the other belonged to a man I hadn't heard before. It was smooth, formal, businesslike. Curious, I crept out of the room and down the hallway, stopping just before the staircase. I crouched low and leaned into the railing. Their words came in bits and pieces. "Already processed. Emergency transfer. Guardian paperwork. Needs the signature." I don't know if this is necessary. She's family, of course, but..." Odessa's voice faltered. "Ma'am, the court recognizes Mr. Vexley as next of kin. With the parents' absence, this is the safest route." My stomach turned. It was happening. I didn't understand every legal term, but I knew enough. He was making it official. Delmar wasn't just acting like my guardian, he was becoming one. Later that afternoon, a man in a gray suit handed Odessa a folder and left through the front door. Odessa didn't look at me when she passed by, but I caught sight of the name on the top page as she closed it. Temporary guardianship approval, Delmar Vexley. I didn't ask. I didn't yell. What would have been the point? The next day, I walked to the end of the driveway to check the mail. Tucked between a local hardware store coupon booklet and a retirement magazine was a thin white envelope from the Buncombe County Family Court. I waited until I was back in the guest room before opening it. There it was, black ink on stiff paper. The state now recognized Delmar as my legal guardian, until further notice. In light of parental disappearance and in the best interest of the minor, it read. Best interest. Whose? 2 mornings later, the local news aired a brief segment. A blurry photo of my parents flashed on the screen under the headline, Missing Couple, Last Seen Camping in Pisgah National Forest. The anchorwoman called it unusual but not unprecedented. Delmar stood in front of the camera, voice low and steady, claiming he was doing all he could to support his niece through this tragic time. She's been through a lot, he said, placing a hand over his chest like he was receiving a medal. But I'm here for her. We'll get through this. There was no mention of foul play, no mention of an investigation, no urgency, just a soft, sanitized summary of a family choosing to step away from the world for a while. I sat in the living room watching it unfold while Odessa sat beside me, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. When the segment ended, she looked over at me and said, It's good people know he's helping. It makes everything feel less chaotic. Less chaotic. Like reality was something you could organize in a spreadsheet. That night, I dreamed of my parents yelling my name from under the floorboards. When I woke, I stared at the ceiling until the sun crept in through the blinds. School was harder than I expected. It wasn't that the teachers treated me badly. If anything, they overcompensated, asking if I needed extra time on assignments, smiling a little too hard when I walked by. But Isla was different. We had been best friends since 2nd grade. She used to come over after school, eat microwave popcorn on my bedroom floor, and argue over which Twilight book was better. She was supposed to be the one person who'd get it. Instead, she avoided me. Not obviously at first, just slower replies, no lunch plans, one-word texts. It all became clear the moment I walked into the cafeteria. I spotted her across the room, laughing with 2 other girls I didn't recognize. When I waved, she froze. I made my way to her table anyway. Hey, I said quietly. She didn't smile. She didn't move. The girl beside her, the one with the over-curled ponytail and too much lip gloss, said, Is this the one? Isla shifted in her seat, her eyes darting to her tray. My mom said I shouldn't get involved, she muttered. My chest tightened. What? She said your family's complicated, that your parents abandoned you. The words dropped like bricks. I started, but she cut me off. I'm sorry, Eden. I really am. But I don't want to be part of this. That was the last sentence she said to me that day. When I got home, I didn't go inside right away. I sat on the back steps until the sky turned orange and the cicadas started singing. I didn't cry. Not then. Later, I opened Instagram. Isla had posted a photo. She stood beside Delmar, smiling like they were uncle and niece. The caption read, So lucky to have strong men in our lives. I locked the phone, set it face down on the nightstand, and stared at the ceiling until long after the moon had risen. It was like Delmar wasn't just replacing my parents. He was replacing me. That night, as I rummaged through Odessa's filing cabinet for no reason other than to feel like I still had some control, I found a box labeled Eden. Inside were vaccination records, report cards, and tucked beneath a pile of preschool drawings, a sealed birth certificate. I unfolded it slowly. On the back, written in fading blue ink, were 3 words. She is ours. My mother's handwriting. I ran my fingers across the letters and whispered, You didn't leave me. I know you didn't. I stayed up most of that night, lying flat on my back with the shoebox tucked under my bed. I kept picturing my mother's watch, how scratched it was, how it definitely wasn't on her wrist when we left for the trip. The strap had dried mud stuck in the buckle, the kind you only get from walking through the forest after a storm. She never would have left it behind, not on purpose. By the time the sun rose, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going to keep whispering. I needed someone to listen, really listen. I just had to find the right voice to reach. Delmar had gone out to run errands, his usual smug routine. Groceries and a pharmacy stop, Eden. You need anything? More paper for those drawings you like so much? His tone had a sweetness that made my skin crawl. No, I answered, keeping my eyes on the floor. Suit yourself. Don't wander, all right? He said, flashing that politician smile he wore like a second skin. The moment I heard his tires leave the driveway, I moved. I crept into his office. No locked doors, because of course, he didn't think he needed them. I pulled the old landline off the hook. It had a slight static hum, like something from another time, but it still worked. I dialed 911 with shaking fingers. 911, what's your emergency? My name is Eden Morin. My parents didn't run away. My uncle drugged them and locked them under the floor of our cabin in Pisgah. Please, you have to send someone. There was silence for a breath. Then the dispatcher's voice returned, calmer now. Can you confirm your location, sweetheart? I rattled off the address. I even spelled out the last name. My hands were sweating against the receiver. How long ago did this happen? 7 days. I tried to tell my grandmother, but no one believes me. He's lying. He made it all look like they left me. She paused. Can you stay on the line with me? But I heard the front door open downstairs. I hung up. Delmar walked in humming some 80s pop song, tossing the keys onto the kitchen counter. I shut the office door behind me like I'd been getting something from the printer. He didn't notice. 20 minutes later, 2 patrol cars pulled up to the house. I watched from behind the curtains as they stepped out. I felt a flicker of hope spark in my chest. Maybe this time, maybe they'd see what I saw. Delmar greeted them on the porch with his arms wide like he was welcoming friends to a barbecue. Oh, officers, what a surprise! I came out a minute later, my voice trembling but clear. He locked them under the floor at the cabin. There's a trap door he painted to look like wood. Delmar blinked but didn't flinch. She's been through something awful, he said, turning to them like I wasn't even there. The stress has caused some imaginative thinking, but we're getting her help. One officer, a woman with a tight bun and tired eyes, knelt down in front of me. Sweetheart, is it possible you imagined this? Sometimes our brains try to make sense of scary things. No, I said, louder than I'd meant to. I saw him do it. They searched the house. I watched from the steps, fists clenched, as they checked the basement. Delmar followed them, pointing out renovations like he was hosting a home tour. Of course, they didn't find anything. The trap door wasn't here. It was at the cabin. And even then, he'd covered it, hidden it like he was burying bones. When they returned upstairs, Delmar gave me a look that could cut glass. He thanked the officers, shaking hands like it was a press event. Then, right in front of them, he walked over and pulled me into a hug. His arm wrapped around my shoulder, his grip just a little too tight. You're safe now, he whispered through clenched teeth. Stop. That night, I sat on the couch in silence as a segment played on the local news. It was called Family Tragedies, the Faces Behind the Headlines. Delmar was featured, standing in front of our house, eyes misty, voice low. She's just a little girl, he said, trying to make sense of something horrible. Her mother, well, she struggled, had outbursts. We're all doing the best we can. The screen cut to a grainy video, my mom raising her voice at me about cleaning my room. It had been taken months ago during a bad week when her father had passed away. They made her look unhinged. Comments started flooding in under the news station's Facebook post. Maybe the mom cracked. Poor kid. Thank God for that uncle. Delmar sat at the kitchen table later that night, sipping coffee, like he hadn't just erased my mother from existence. I waited until he went to bed. I crept into the hallway and made my way toward the storage closet near the garage. I remembered Mom used to keep old boxes there, keepsakes, journals, random things she couldn't bring herself to throw out. I searched for an hour, and there it was, at the bottom of a plastic bin beneath a stack of dusty Christmas decorations, her watch, the one she wore every day, the one she'd never leave behind. The leather strap was torn, the face scratched like it had scraped against stone. It was still ticking, faintly. I held it to my chest. She didn't leave it. She didn't leave me. She didn't leave anything. She was taken. I put the watch in a shoebox under my bed, wrapping it in an old t-shirt. It wasn't much, but it was something. A sign. A sliver of truth I could hold on to. "You left me a sign," I whispered. "I'll find the rest." I didn't sleep much that night. I kept my shoes on. I don't know why, exactly. Maybe because part of me believed there was a chance, however small, that I might need to leave in a hurry. Or maybe because that tiny music box, stuffed inside the toe of my left sneaker next to my mom's note, felt more real than the walls around me. The house creaked with the weight of quiet lies. Delmar was already snoring in the room across the hall, like nothing in the world could touch him. Odessa had retired early, as usual, claiming she needed a moment of peace from all the worry. But I didn't buy that. None of this was about peace. It was about erasing everything I knew. I sat upright on the bed and hugged my old stuffed bunny to my chest, the same one I'd had since I was 4. Its ears were frayed, the pink ribbon around its neck mostly worn away. As I pressed it closer, I heard something. Not outside. Not from the hallway. It came from inside the bunny. I stilled, heart hammering. Then slowly, I turned the toy over and ran my fingers along its seam. Sure enough, there was a rough stitch across the bottom of its back leg, messy, uneven, like someone had sewn it shut in a rush. I grabbed the small sewing scissors from my art kit and carefully snipped the thread. My hands were shaking, but I didn't stop. Inside was a piece of crumpled paper, folded and yellowed. I unfolded it like it was a prayer. The handwriting was unmistakable. Mom's loopy cursive, always slanted just slightly to the right. And the date? The very morning we left for the trip. "If they ask, stay quiet. Someone will come. Don't forget who you are. Mom." I read the words 3 times, then a 4th. My chest ached so hard it felt like my ribs were splintering. She knew. She knew something was going to happen. Or maybe she knew she couldn't stop it. But instead of leaving me with nothing, she left this, hidden, buried in the only place she knew I'd eventually check. I lay back on the bed, clutched the bunny tight, and wept. Not loudly, just tears leaking down the sides of my face and into my pillowcase. The next morning, after forcing down half a piece of toast under Delmar's watchful eye, I went upstairs and opened the hallway attic door. It hadn't been touched in years. Odessa claimed her knees didn't agree with ladders anymore, and Delmar had no reason to dig through family junk. I climbed up into the space, coughing through the dust. I moved box after box, ignoring the photos, the Christmas wreaths, the boxes labeled Dad's Tools. Eventually, near the far corner behind a stack of old scarves, I found it, a music box. It was rectangular, wooden, with a delicate flower carved into the lid. I remembered it from my parents' room, one of those things Mom never let me touch. I had always assumed it was just broken. I sat down and turned the key on the bottom until it caught. The lullaby began, a simple, fragile melody, and then a click. A soft voice crackled through the music just above the tune, faint but unmistakable. "If you hear this, we didn't leave you. We were taken. Eden, baby. Trust yourself. We love you. Don't forget that." I dropped it. The box hit the floor and the sound stopped immediately. I didn't pick it up right away. I sat frozen, staring at the dust motes dancing in the sunlight cutting through the attic window. They hadn't left. They were stolen, just like I'd always known. I carried the music box back downstairs and locked it in my backpack. For the rest of the day, I didn't speak much. Odessa didn't press. Delmar kept up his usual routine of half smiles and fake warmth. I watched him move around the kitchen, wondering how someone could make coffee with the same hands that had dragged my parents away. That night, I spread my sketch pad across my bed. But this time, I didn't draw faces or trapdoors. I made a map. Our cabin, the woods, the last trail we walked. I marked the approximate location of the cabin with an X and labeled what I remembered about the inside, the back room, the basement entrance, the rug that didn't match the rest of the decor. And then I remembered something else, something Delmar had said the day after we got back, while talking to a neighbor at the mailbox. "Basements are overrated," he laughed. "Crawl spaces are cleaner." It sounded harmless at the time, but now it felt like a breadcrumb. I went down to the basement around 9, claiming I needed to find an old school project. Odessa nodded, half asleep in her recliner, and Delmar barely looked up from his Sudoku book. I took my time. Most of the floor was unfinished, concrete with cracks and patches, but near the far right corner, one plank looked different. It was smoother, sanded, newer wood, maybe 6 months old, with no dust on it. I pressed my palm against it and held my breath. Nothing. But the seam was there, barely visible. I marked it in my notebook and returned upstairs. From that point on, everything changed. I started documenting everything, every sentence Delmar said, every contradiction, every slip. I wrote it all in a new journal, one that stayed hidden in the back of my closet under a box of old shoes. I didn't know what would be enough to convince anyone. But I wasn't waiting around to be believed anymore. I was going to build the truth piece by piece until it was too loud to ignore. I copied the music box recording onto a flash drive at school. I stashed the note from my bunny inside an empty lip balm container. I taped a tiny microphone under the hallway table near the phone. Every move I made was deliberate now. Delmar started noticing. He didn't say anything directly, but I saw it in the way his eyes followed me longer than necessary, the way he double-checked locks, the way his smile tightened when he asked, "Everything okay, sweetheart?" I nodded, always, but in my head, I repeated one line over and over, just in case I disappear next. After labeling the Ziploc bag, I tucked it behind the vent cover beneath my desk, one of the few spots in the house I was sure Delmar wouldn't check. He never came into my room unless Odessa asked him to bring up clean towels or fix the Wi-Fi. And when he did, it was always brief, like he couldn't stomach being in the same space with me too long without slipping. I sat on the carpet for a moment longer, listening to the late-night murmurs from downstairs. The TV droned on, voices from a rerun crime drama echoing through the air vents, fitting in a twisted way. I could hear Delmar laughing occasionally, like everything in his world was falling into place. But he was wrong. I was getting closer. The next morning, Odessa asked me to dust the bookshelves in Delmar's office. "It's your room too, in a way," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You should feel comfortable in every corner of this house." I didn't answer, just nodded and went upstairs with the rag and lemon-scented spray in hand. The office was too clean, too perfect. Every pencil aligned, every file drawer locked. But one thing caught my eye, a recipe book. It was one of those thick, spiral-bound types with tabs sticking out. I'd seen Mom flip through it years ago during the holidays. Something told me it didn't belong there. I opened it slowly, thumbing through pages until a note slipped out between the index and a dog-eared pie crust recipe. "Ever hope? Use this name. Ask Vigo." My breath caught. The handwriting was unmistakably hers, not just the looped letters, but the way she always dotted her I's with slightly tilted ovals. I tucked the note into my waistband and closed the book. Later, when Delmar left for his midday meeting, which I assumed was just code for visiting someone who thought he was a godsend, I raced to the guest room with my laptop. I typed Everhope Trust Fund into the search bar. Dozens of results came up. Most were obscure financial articles, nonprofit registration documents, and one hit on a private legal consulting firm in North Carolina. But one entry stood out, a charitable trust with a secured guardian override clause, established 15 years ago under the names Callan and Sarah Lennox, my parents. Then I saw it. A red banner, restricted, under temporary guardian authorization. My stomach dropped. I checked the contact information at the bottom. One name and email, vigo@haldenfirm.com. So it was real. All of it. Mom's plan wasn't just to leave clues. She'd prepared something that was now under Delmar's control. I copied the email down into my journal, but didn't send anything. Not yet. Not until I had more. That night, I asked Odessa if I could eat dinner with them at the main table. She looked surprised, but didn't question it. Delmar acted like it was some kind of family reunion. "Well, look who's decided to join the living," he said with a smirk, carving into his pork chop. "We missed your sparkling conversation." I sat across from him, slowly stirring my mashed potatoes. "Do you remember," I said carefully, "how Mom used to hate the basement vent in the cabin? Said it made this screeching noise that kept her up?" His fork paused halfway to his mouth. Just for a second. Then he laughed, but it was half a beat too slow. "She always hated weird noises, couldn't stand creaky floors or ticking clocks." I kept my face blank. There is no vent in the basement of our house, and the cabin's vent was the only one that ever screeched. It wasn't something you could forget, especially not if you'd heard her complain about it a dozen times, like he apparently had. But according to him, he never stepped foot in that cabin, not after dropping us off, not after he left for the weekend. His reaction told me otherwise. After dinner, I excused myself early and went straight to my room. I closed the door quietly, sat at my desk, and pulled out my journal. He reacted. That means he was there. He remembers what she said. He knows I know. I felt something shift in my chest. Not fear, not sadness. Something harder, sharper. I opened my laptop again and stared at the email I'd written to Viggo Halden. It was simple. Subject: Everhope Trust. Message: My name is Eden Morin. I believe someone has fraudulently activated my parents' trust. I need to know who authorized it. I hovered over the send button, but I didn't click, not yet. I had one last move to make. The next morning, I emptied the contents of my hiding spots: my mom's note, the printout of the Everhope record, the flash drive with the music box recording, and my journal. I put them all in a heavy-duty Ziploc and labeled it in thick marker. If they don't believe me, show them this. Then I unscrewed the air vent near my desk and shoved the bag as deep inside as it would go. I covered it back up, tightened the screws, and stood there a moment, just breathing. I didn't sleep that night because I was scared. I slept with my door locked because I had work to do. He had no idea that I had already shifted the game. I slid the vent cover back into place, my fingers pressing the last screw firm against the wall. My chest rose and fell in measured, deliberate breaths. If something happened to me now, at least the truth would have somewhere to land. Downstairs, I could hear Odessa laughing, muffled and distant, at whatever Delmar was saying on the phone. It was past 9, but he'd made a fresh pot of coffee. The smell floated up through the stairwell, mixing with the sharp citrus of the cleaner I used earlier in the day. By morning, everything about him would look like concern. The next day, he told me to wear something presentable. I was to sit beside him for a segment being filmed by a local news crew. Community outreach, he called it, while adjusting his tie in the hallway mirror. "I think it's important people see we're a united front," he said, smoothing his collar. "Public perception, Eden. That matters. Especially when things are messy." He glanced at me through the mirror's reflection, waiting for me to respond. I just nodded and walked to the front door without a word. The broadcast took place at the local community center, the same one where I used to take art classes. I hadn't stepped inside that building since before the camping trip. Now it felt unfamiliar, too bright. The news crew had set up a simple backdrop: 2 chairs, some potted plants, and a banner behind us that read, "Raising Someone Else's Child, the Stories Behind the Stories." Delmar's smile was glued to his face from the second the cameras started rolling. "I just want what's best for her," he said, blinking twice, perfectly timed with his sigh. "It's been difficult, but she's a good kid. She's just confused. Trauma does that to children." He reached over and placed his hand on mine. I flinched. Not dramatically, not enough to make a sound. But the cameraman zoomed in at the exact moment his thumb pressed against the side of my wrist, right where the bruise was still faintly visible. Delmar noticed too. I saw it in the slight tightening of his jaw, but he didn't move his hand. I held my breath until the segment ended. When we returned home, he barely spoke. He poured himself a drink, not coffee this time, and paced the kitchen while Odessa reheated leftovers. By midnight, I checked the local station's online video feed. The segment had already aired. And there, right in the middle of a 5-minute fluff piece about community resilience and foster guardianship, was my hand, bruised, pulled away. The comment section lit up within minutes. Did anyone else see the girl flinch? She didn't even look at him once. Why's her wrist bruised? Somebody check on that kid. I copied the link and sent it to my school email, just in case. The next day, I kept to myself. I avoided eye contact. I acted like everything was normal. At lunch, Delmar didn't say a word about the video, but his mood had shifted. He wasn't angry. He was careful, calculating. Later that evening, I got a message on the school's shared computer system. It was from Madden Orick, the young cop who was there the first time I called 911. Subject: cabin footage. Message: we pulled the security footage from the campsite. Days 5 and 6 are missing, either deleted or corrupted, but the drive shows recent edits. Someone accessed it last week. I stared at the screen for a long time before responding. Reply: thank you. That was all I could say. All I needed to say. I jotted the update down in my journal. He's covering his tracks, faster than I can uncover them. But that was fine, because I'd already taken the next step. The night before, I'd walked into the public library 3 blocks down. I signed in at the computer under a fake name, Claire Foster. I kept the hood of my sweatshirt low, and the librarian didn't ask questions. I opened the browser, turned on the voice modulator app, and called the number listed on the Halden legal site. It rang twice before going to voicemail. Everhope Trust, I said into the mic. Check the signature on the transfer, then call me back. This isn't over. I hung up. Cleared the browser history, wiped the headphones, walked out. That evening, as the sun dipped past the tree line and Odessa dozed off in her recliner, I went back to my room. I took the music box out from my dresser drawer and ran my fingers over the carved lid. I didn't open it, didn't need to. I knew the message by heart. If you hear this, we didn't leave you. We were taken. I lifted the vent cover one more time, checked that the Ziploc bag was still buried inside, and secured it again. Everything he'd tried to erase, I was bringing back to light. Then I whispered toward the hallway, toward the silence that wrapped this house like a blanket. Your mask is slipping, Delmar. Keep talking. By the time I finished whispering those words, I already knew I had crossed a line he wouldn't forgive. Delmar wasn't the type to shout. He wasn't loud like the men who punched walls and blamed whiskey. No, he was surgical. Quiet. He'd cut you without ever raising his voice, and the worst part was, you'd thank him for the lesson. But tonight was different. Something about the air felt brittle. The house was too still. I could hear every breath he took, even rooms away, as if he were rehearsing, deciding how to respond now that the spotlight had shifted, even just an inch. After dinner, I left a folded draft of my Everhope email where he'd be sure to find it, wedged just slightly between the pages of a magazine he always flipped through while Odessa loaded the dishwasher. It didn't take long. Maybe 15 minutes later, I heard the magazine slap the kitchen counter, then the scrape of the chair legs, then footsteps, slow, measured, coming toward me. I sat at the dining table pretending to read the local newspaper, the one Odessa subscribed to mostly for the Sunday coupons. I kept my eyes on a headline about a ribbon-cutting ceremony at the senior center, though my hands were clenched in my lap beneath the tablecloth. He stopped at the edge of the room. "Where'd you get that?" he asked calmly. I didn't look up. "What?" "You know what I'm talking about." I met his gaze. It was in Mom's Bible. She wrote it down. He blinked once, just once, but I saw the flash in his eyes. "Don't go digging through things that aren't yours, Eden." I shrugged. "Her Bible's mine now, right? Since she's gone." He didn't say a word. He just turned, walked over to the silverware drawer, and slammed it shut with so much force the forks rattled. Then he left the room. I waited a full 2 minutes before breathing again. That night at dinner, Odessa talked about a church bake sale like we hadn't just stared into the edge of war an hour earlier. Delmar sliced roast beef and passed it to me without a word. Halfway through chewing a bite of steamed carrots, I dropped it. "Hey, do you remember how Mom used to complain about the chirping noise from the back vent in the cabin?" I asked, as casually as if I were asking for salt. Delmar froze, just for a second, but his knife hesitated in midair. She hated everything noisy, he said finally, placing the blade against his plate a little too neatly. Old plumbing, dogs barking, wind through the windows. His voice was too even, but he slipped, because that vent didn't exist, at least not here. It was only in the cabin, the one he claimed he never went back to, the one where I saw him drag their bodies. I nodded slowly and returned to my food. He didn't speak for the rest of dinner. Later that evening, Odessa went to bed early with a cup of chamomile tea and her crossword puzzle book. That left just the two of us. I carried my plate into the kitchen, rinsed it, and stood at the sink a moment too long. "Did you enjoy your little performance at dinner?" he said behind me. I turned slowly. "You mean the one where I asked a normal question?" "You think you're clever," he said, stepping closer. "You think you're going to trap me. I don't have to. You're already unraveling." His smile dropped. "You need to be very careful, Eden." "Or what?" I asked. "You'll make me disappear too?" He stepped forward, just one step, and that was enough. I bolted. Out the back door, across the porch. My journal was still in my pocket, sticking out just enough to be noticeable. He followed. I didn't make it far. I stopped at the fence line where the yard met Agatha Murney's. She was on her porch, watering plants like she always did around that hour, wearing her usual thick sweater and house slippers even though the weather didn't call for it. I turned just as Delmar caught up. He grabbed the edge of my shirt and yanked. "What do you think you're doing?" he hissed. "I'm done being quiet," I said. That's when it happened. He slapped me. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't theatrical, but it was loud, sharp, and it knocked me off balance. I stumbled, caught the fence, and looked up. Agatha was standing now. Her watering can hit the porch with a loud clang. "What in God's name do you think you're doing?" she yelled across the lawn. Delmar turned toward her, face pale. Agatha didn't wait for a response. She reached into her cardigan pocket and pulled out her cell phone. "I saw you. You put your hands on her, and I am calling the police right now." Delmar didn't say a word. He backed up slowly, hands up like she had a gun. She's been acting out," he stammered. "You don't know what's been going on." "Oh, I know plenty," Agatha snapped. "You don't raise your hand to a child, not ever, and certainly not in front of someone who still knows right from wrong." He looked at me, then back at her, then turned and went back inside. I stood there, hand to my cheek, the sting still fresh. Agatha didn't come down the stairs. She didn't rush over with a hug or a blanket or a cookie. She just stood there like a witness who had seen exactly what needed to be seen. The sirens came 15 minutes later. Blue and red flashed across the white paneling of the house. Neighbors peeked through blinds. Someone recorded a video. Delmar didn't come back outside. A female officer took my statement. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. "He was always this way," I told her. "Now someone else sees it." The officer nodded solemnly and handed me a tissue I didn't need. They took photos of the mark on my face, measured the bruise, logged the time, collected Agatha's statement too. As they wrapped up, I looked down the street. The world felt different. Something had shifted. Not enough to make me safe, but enough to know the silence was breaking. I closed my eyes as the sirens began to fade. "You wanted me quiet," I whispered to myself. "Now everyone's listening." The flashing lights hadn't even faded from our street before the call came in. Not to me, no one called me directly, but I heard Thayer Rook's voice downstairs, calm but unmistakably sharper than usual. "Agatha's statement was enough to move the needle," he said. "But it wasn't just her testimony. We got the cabin footage restored." I crept down the stairs just far enough to see the blue of his jacket collar peeking out from behind the kitchen archway. Delmar was nowhere in sight. Odessa was seated stiffly at the table, her hands wrapped around a ceramic mug that hadn't been filled. Thayer continued. "We saw it, Eden. Not all of it, but enough." I didn't speak, just nodded once from the stairs. That was all it took. "We're going," he said. And just like that, I was back in that car, this time with two squad SUVs behind us, heading up the winding roads toward the cabin I thought I'd never see again. The tires rumbled over loose gravel as the tree canopy thickened above us. Thayer rode up front. Madden Oric was beside me in the back seat, flipping through a folder with my name written on a sticky tab. He didn't look at me while he spoke. The hard drive had been tampered with, 2 days gone, but the recovery team found traces, pieces that couldn't be erased without leaving a digital footprint. You were telling the truth the whole time. I didn't answer him either. I didn't need to. The cabin looked exactly as I remembered it, slouched into the forest like it knew what it had done. The porch sagged slightly on the left side, the shutters hung crooked, but it was quiet, still. Inside, the floorboards groaned under our boots. Madden motioned for me to lead them. I moved toward the back room. The same rug was still there, hiding the same uneven edge I'd memorized in my sketchbook. I knelt, peeled it back, and tapped my fingers against the board I knew was different. Thayer stepped forward with a crowbar. The wood resisted at first, like it knew it had been found out. But then it gave. The crowbar slipped underneath, pried up the board, and the smell hit us all at once. Damp earth, mildew, something older and heavier, like time that had gone rancid. Underneath was a trap door, rusted hinges, no handle. Thayer looked at me. "Are you sure?" I nodded once. "That's where they are." Madden knelt, forced the crowbar against the rusted edge, and pried. The hinges squealed like they hadn't moved in years. A thick wave of air pushed upward, stale and wet. And then, a knock. Barely a sound, just once, but we all heard it. I stepped back. My hands trembled as I whispered, "That's my mom." Thayer shouted down into the dark. "Callan, Sarah Lennox, this is the Asheville Police Department. If you can hear me, we're here to help." The knock came again, and again. I didn't see the next few minutes, not really, just flashes. Madden and another officer dropping into the hole with flashlights. Voices echoing below. A stretcher being called for. Oxygen masks being opened. And then I saw them. My father first, his beard ragged, his face drawn and pale, but his eyes alert. His body had shrunk into itself, but his arms still opened the moment he saw me. Behind him, my mother, thinner than I'd ever seen her, lips cracked, skin graying around the edges, but alive. "Eden?" she rasped. I ran to her. She couldn't catch me, but she tried. Her fingers brushed my cheek before she collapsed against the medic behind her. "Is she okay?" she asked over and over again, even when they were trying to lift her onto the stretcher. "Is my daughter okay?" "I'm fine," I said, my voice breaking. "I'm right here. I'm okay now." They wrapped blankets around both of them. The medics were efficient, calm, but I could see it in their faces. They weren't used to pulling people out alive. Not like this. Once my parents were safely inside the ambulance, Thayer handed me a manila folder. "You should see this." Inside were the documents Delmar had forged, signature mismatches, authorization requests, fund withdrawals under guardian consent, a paper trail of theft and lies. "He didn't just take their freedom," Madden said. "He tried to take their daughter and their future." We drove back into town in silence. I sat in the back of the cruiser, arms wrapped around my knees, the folder still clutched to my chest. Delmar didn't know we were coming. He was hosting a charity luncheon. Of course he was. Press, name tags, music, the works. When the police entered, he didn't even flinch at first. He smiled, raised a glass, said, "I didn't expect this level of support." And then he saw me. The blood drained from his face like someone had flipped a switch. I stood beside Thayer as they read him his rights. As reporters swarmed, as his carefully built lie began to crumble, he said nothing, not a word, but his eyes locked on mine the entire time. The headline hit the local news later that night. "Teen's claims lead to arrest in high-profile kidnapping. She never stopped believing." Some called me a liar. Others called me brave. Most just stared at the photos and asked how something like this could happen in a town like ours. They didn't know half of it. At the police station, after giving my last official statement, I waited alone in the lobby until one of the officers returned something to me. my mother's scarf, the one she always wore when she didn't feel strong, like it gave her protection. I held it in my lap for a long time. They were under the floor, I said softly. And I'll never let anyone bury me again. 2 weeks later, I was back in the hospital, but this time, not as a case number, not as a false alarm, not as a child no one would listen to. I was there to sit beside my mother. The lights in the recovery room were soft, casting gentle shadows on the linoleum floor. The beep of her heart monitor was steady now, not frantic like the night they pulled her and my father from beneath the floor. Her hair was thinner, her face drawn, but her eyes, those eyes still carried fire. I sat beside her with her scarf wrapped around my fingers. It smelled faintly of chamomile and something I couldn't quite name, something that reminded me of bedtime stories and burned toast and laughter that used to fill our house before everything got stolen. She opened her eyes slowly. "You never stopped believing, did you?" she whispered. I tried to speak, but the lump in my throat had other plans. I just shook my head. She reached out, barely able to lift her hand, and rested it on top of mine. Her touch was weak, but it grounded me. It told me everything I needed to know, that this moment was real, that I had made it to the other side. The next day, I wore my cleanest jeans and a button-up shirt. Odessa called it Sunday service formal. She'd been quieter since the arrest, less performative, more deliberate. She didn't say much, but she did something no one else expected. She walked into court with a weathered envelope in her hands. "I need to speak," she said clearly, voice loud enough to carry across the rows of wooden benches. The judge, an older man with a thick neck and a permanent frown, raised an eyebrow. "Proceed, Mrs. Byrne." She stepped forward and handed the envelope to Viggo Halden, who scanned its contents before glancing up in surprise. "This is the original trust assignment," he confirmed, "the one that predates all of Delmar Vexley's filings." Odessa faced the room. "I found it in a box I hadn't opened in years. It had my daughter-in-law's handwriting, and Callan's signature. Delmar lied. I believed him because he was my son. But he used me. Just like he used Eden. I didn't expect to feel pity for her. But I did. The judge didn't need more than that. In a single ruling, he revoked Delmar's guardianship, froze all access to the trust fund, and reinstated my parents' authority, pending their full recovery. "Ms. Morin," the judge said, looking directly at me, "I owe you an apology on behalf of this court." I nodded. I didn't need an apology. I just needed it on record. The sentencing came a week later. Delmar stood in front of a different judge this time, wearing a plain gray jumpsuit, his once pristine hair now tangled at the edges. His lawyer advised him to take a plea. He didn't fight it. He pled guilty to unlawful imprisonment, financial fraud, falsifying documents, and child endangerment. 25 years without the possibility of parole. When they led him away in cuffs, he turned and looked at me. Not at my parents, not at Odessa, just me. "You ruined me," he mouthed. I didn't blink. I mouthed back, "You did that yourself." It was raining the day we returned home. Not a dramatic storm, just a steady drizzle that softened everything, the kind that made the pavement smell clean again. The house was exactly as we'd left it, except nothing felt the same. Mom walked in first, clutching Dad's arm for balance. I followed behind them, suddenly smaller than I remembered being. Every picture on the wall was still there, every piece of furniture in its place, but something in the air had shifted, like the house had held its breath for weeks, and now it didn't know how to exhale. I went to my room, opened the door slowly. The music box was still tucked beneath my pillow. I sat on the edge of the bed and picked it up. I didn't wind it this time. I just held it, like a reminder of everything that came before. Across the room, my sketchpad rested on the nightstand. I flipped through it, page after page. Some of the drawings were smudged, others half-finished, but they all told the same story. A girl no one heard, who found her own voice when no one offered one. But now the drawings had changed. There were flowers, sunlight breaking through treetops. A porch swing with two people sitting side by side, one with a blanket over her lap, the other holding a pencil. I walked down the hall. Mom was sitting in the living room, a cup of tea in her hand, her legs tucked beneath her on the couch like she used to do when reading. She looked up and smiled when I entered. "What will you draw next?" she asked softly. I thought about it for a long moment. Then I looked out the window, watching the rain slide down the glass in steady streams. "Something louder than silence," I said. "Sometimes the most dangerous lies aren't the ones we tell, they're the ones we choose to believe." Eden's story reminds us that silence can be a prison, but truth, spoken or drawn, has the power to set everything free. Have you ever been dismissed simply because you were too young, too quiet, or too inconvenient? Tell us your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more true inspired stories that challenge, haunt, and heal, don't forget to subscribe. There's more to come.